I'm asked to remind members about no water, cups, glasses brought into the chamber because we had a breakage before the adjournment, and if it had gone all over the electronics, that would not have been a good thing. So if I could just remind people that that is part of the standing orders. So we are discussing at this point what the timing for our close should be this evening. The Chief Minister has made a proposition that we should revert from the 8 p.m. previously decided to 6 p.m. and, if necessary, continue tomorrow. Before I call upon the Chief Minister to respond to the points that have been made, does any other member wish to speak on that particular issue? No member wishes. Oh, Connie Harbison-Brillard.
Thank you, sir. I would just like to make the point that several Contabs have a degree of obligation to attend in the Royal Court at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. So I think many of us would be grateful to get the business of the day out of the way, if at all possible, up till 8 o'clock. Thank you, sir.
Up to 8 o'clock. Very well. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Rob Ward.
Yeah, thanks, sir. I thought we'd extend today, but finishing at 6 and coming back tomorrow. This is the government plan. It's the most important debate of the year. It sets the funding and everything else for the entire year, and I think that people need to debate it properly. And we knew about this for some time. We knew we were coming to the Friday weeks ago, and I don't think we should try and curtail debate. I know we have this constant thing about, oh, why are people talking one thing for so long? Because this is our democracy and we were elected to represent in this chamber. It may be an inconvenience to come back, perhaps, but I think we need to give it the time that it deserves and not try and quell debate on the government plan as a whole, because it's such an important document that we either will or won't put our names to. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. We did decide to start on Monday instead of Tuesday to allow us to finish the sitting on Friday, and I don't think we should be aiming to try and finish before to free us a day. So I think it'd be better that we all have a clear mind and trust we'll be quick and finish by 6 today.
Does any other member wish to speak on the Deputy Scott?
Sir, I agree with Deputy Alex Curtis, and would point out it would also give deputies of St Brillard an opportunity to attend the twinning dinner.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak? I close the debate and call on the Chief Minister to respond.
I thank those who have contributed succinctly to this brief debate. I brought the proposition because I feel it's important that we give early warning, not just to members of the Assembly, but to those who very kindly assist us in meeting. And I believe it's important that we give them due consideration to our decisions to work into the evening and due time to prepare for that. People have caring responsibilities. There are parents here today who have children who are unable to attend school and because of the industrial action that is taking place, unfortunately. Therefore, I ask members to consider not only the obligations that they have outside of this Assembly. I know there are many festive arrangements this evening, but also for those of others who make sure that we're able to meet in this Assembly and organise all that goes on around it. So we thank them all, respect all of their efforts to assisting us throughout the year as well as through this week, and I propose the motion.
As it wasn't clearly identified on the last occasion, I think we should put this to the appel. Invite any members not in the chamber to return to their seats. A vote pour means that we will then adjourn at 6 o'clock with a view, if we have not concluded business, to resuming on Friday. And a vote contra means we will continue as presently agreed to 8 p.m. Very well. Ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The proposition has been carried, 21 votes pour, 19 votes contra. Very well. And we now resume the debate on the Eighth Amendment, and the last speaker was Deputy Renouf. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Deputy Jean.
Yes, thank you, sir. And I want to be brief, and maybe this feeds into the next discussion too. And first of all, I wanted to thank Deputy Ward for his persistence for this, to having a scheme for youngsters to have the Avanci card. My 12-year-old has just been granted one, and he is using it very freely the last 3 days. I don't know where he is on the island, but I'm sure he's having great fun. I want to thank him very much, but I just wanted to remind members that the funding, where this is coming from, and why this was specifically on electric vehicles. And what we're talking about is not just cars; it's electric bikes, mopeds, vans for businesses as well. Is because the carbon neutral roadmap and the commitment that the last States Assembly made, and this Assembly through the Common Strategic Policy Priorities have said we need to reduce our emissions. And the big one is 68% by 2030. 2030 is not very far away. In fact, my son will be leaving school and graduating in 2030. So it's not actually very long. He will see the next few years in secondary school. And by that time, we need to have reduced our emissions by 68%. And the biggest chunk of that is with vehicle emissions. And so this funding, this budget, this funding line is the only way at the moment that we can nudge those who have fossil fuel cars to find alternatives, whether that is through electric vehicles, but also mopeds, and also for businesses, if they want to also make that change, that they can also do the change through the van. And it's a small subsidy to help overcome that initial costs, to be able to bring especially second-hand vehicles onto the island, to start preparing the market for the changes that the big changes that we're going to have to make. And we, as Deputy Renouf said, we are seeing those changes. And so, of course, with this amendment, with this proposition, and with the next one as well, though absolutely I see the importance of them from the sustainable transport hierarchy, and I agree that there needs to be a wider look at a strategy, because it is about frequency as much about who is using the buses. But at the same time, I want to remind islanders, I wanted to remind the States Assembly that when we are looking at our reduction in emissions in the next few years, and you will be calling on the government to have made those reductions as well and seeing the progress, that one of the biggest is around fossil fuel cars. And if we aren't making those reductions, I just want to remind that part of the strategy was to encourage people to move to electric vehicles of all types. So just wanted to put that on record. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Deputy Mezey.
Thank you, sir. The previous speaker used the word nudge on this when referring to trying to get people to get rid of their fossil fuel powered cars and move on to electric vehicles. But I think the exact same argument can be made for this proposition in terms of young people's behaviour and expectations when it comes to travel, and making it more part of their culture growing up that bus travel is the default form of travel, rather than personal vehicle usage for journeys that could very well actually be done by bus perfectly conveniently. Otherwise, the Avanci 18 bus pass has quite obviously been a huge success. I don't think any reasonable person could doubt that, even though it was achieved as part of a long uphill struggle that Deputy Ward led, eventually getting it secured as a pilot, and then obviously it got made permanent afterwards. Who could possibly have not wanted it to be permanent after seeing the success that it was? And extending that to those young adult years, where many of those young people, some who are already students will still be covered anyway, but those who start working or enter that part of their life, to be able to maintain this for them, having had it when they were children, will have it still be part of their culture as they grow into adulthood, used to getting buses rather than just expecting to conduct every journey in a personal fossil fuel powered vehicle. I do think that there are perfectly legitimate criticisms to be made of the subsidy for electric vehicles and the lack of safeguards that there are in that scheme to get the best use of money out of it. For example, we're giving public money to relatively affluent people to buy what could be their second or third vehicle and get a discount on it whilst maintaining their old vehicle, or they may be selling on that fossil fuel vehicle to someone else rather than scrapping it, and so that vehicle still plays a part in the fossil fuel emissions, carbon emissions in Jersey. So there's a reason that that scheme in particular has irked some people because of not viewing it as proper value for money and targeted in the way that it otherwise could be to get the maximum impact. But this proposition or amendment from Deputy Ward helps nudge those younger people into using buses more frequently as the default method of travel, and something that we hope they'll continue for the rest of their lives. And in doing so, I think Deputy Ward is on the right tracks, and so we'll support it.
Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? No other member wishes to speak? And I close the debate and call upon Deputy Ward to respond.
Thank you, sir, and I thank everyone for contributing. It's a shame we had the break because it was all clear in my mind, and now I have to read my notes. And as I've said before, my handwriting is really not very good at all. So if I miss something out, it's because I didn't focus well enough at school on my handwriting. There we go. My teacher was, Deputy Gorse just suggested, sir, the teacher wasn't paid enough. Well, nothing changes, eh? So let's move on. I thank you for that. So I thank the Deputy for that. Let's move forward now. So I'm not entirely sure where to start. The Constable St Helier's not in here, which is a shame because I wanted to address him. I'll wait till he might appear. Deputy Binet, we've heard these stories before. I've got the comments papers. I had to be very careful that I was reading the right comments paper for the right amendment because they're almost identical. They're cut and pasted. Same tired arguments with points that are irrelevant. This is about extending a pass to 21 years old. And let me start off by making it clear. I would suggest not a single one of those 21-year-olds is going to have the money, unless they're very lucky, to buy an EV car and get the subsidy. So the EV subsidy is not going to address those young people at all. That is not going to change their behaviour. But they would have had years of being given access to the bus transport system. And so it's working. And the example I will give you, which is a really pleasant example I experienced myself. I was going up to the airport on the bus because the bus goes past the end of my road, really good. And we were sat on the bottom of the 15 bus, great route, and we stopped by the Kennervay, and off got an entire football team with the substitutes. And when I looked at that, I thought, this is working. How many car journeys were saved through them taking that bus? And that nudge for them to take that bus because they were enabled by this assembly to get cheap, and it's not free. I will say to Deputy Binet, you have to pay £20 a year, and that £20 is still a payment to the bus company, and it works. But what will happen is and now we have full-time students as well. That was recognised last time, but there's a gap. There's a section of our community who may not be a full-time student but have started work. And they've got a tough enough time as it is finding accommodation, paying rent, the expenses of everything that's going on. This is a tiny little help. One, a help towards lowering the cost of those young people if they want to travel to work and start their careers. Two, that is the nudge. It's not the nudge. That's happened up to the age of 18. This is helping them again onto the bus and changing behaviour. Cultural change. I'm sure we can look up, sir, evidence from just about anywhere, and I'll go through some of that was mentioned, to say that if you change your behaviour, I think it's 2 years before you change your behaviour for good. That's why, sir, I'm not as fit as I should be, because I never persist. But there we go. And Deputy Binet, sir, the Minister, I like to quote places like Tallinn, which is great in Estonia, I believe. I hope I've got that right, otherwise I've embarrassed myself. It's a much larger place than Jersey. It's in Central Europe. We are a specific small island, 9x5, where we should have a bus system that is absolutely usable and accessible. And if we are genuinely going to change car use, sir, we have to give genuine reasons for people to get out of their car and not use it. And it's okay for us to say, oh, well, young people should be walking or cycling. Two things, sir. One, get a teenager to walk. Good luck. Second thing, sir, get a 21-year-old to walk. Good luck. So I've been through both of those experiences, and you end up driving because it's easier. Or, as so many parents can now say on this island, I'm not taking you, get the bus, you got a bus pass. And it works. This extends this so that we don't fall off the cliff at the age of 18 when you leave, which is a bit of a double whammy. You're not a full-time student, you're going out to work, but now you're going to pay more. Although, if we do look at the next one coming along, which is a much even better one, we can solve that as well. And I will say to Deputy Binet, this argument, this red herring about, well, there aren't enough buses, and I would say to any of you who say there aren't enough buses, I have been told, and we've been told in this Assembly for the last year, 2 years, 3 years, I don't know how long now, that they're renegotiating the bus contract, sir. And it's going to be much better when we do that. But we haven't renegotiated that bus contract yet, but it's still going. Now, what are we renegotiating? A bus contract which means we can't actually put these pluses in place for young people to change their behaviour because you're not going to supply us enough buses. Now, many of you have been in business and run businesses. Would you really take a contract that can't supply the needs that you want? Of course you wouldn't. What are they doing negotiating this contract? And as for subsidies, sir, I can only guess the level of subsidy. I know it's a minimum of £4.5 million. And what it goes up to, I don't know, 6 million, £7 million, is commercially sensitive. So when you say, sir, the minister says, but we can't be subsidising the buses with some. We're already doing it, but we're not getting back what we need to change behaviour and enable less cars to be off the road. And so as for the EV project, I have an electric car. I didn't use the EV subsidy. I hope the JEP print that. I did not use the EV subsidy because I didn't think it was right to. And also, it was an interest-free credit deal. It was a great deal, sir. As interest rates would go up, my deal got better and better. And I scrapped a car, but I don't believe many people will. If I was to buy another EV, then the car that we have that we use as a run around for all sorts of other things, we'll load up with loads of junk, my daughter would take it. And it would be an extra car on the road as well as the EV, and I guarantee this, sir, she certainly wouldn't be putting biofuel in it. Indeed, she never puts any fuel in it. I wanted to get that on Hansard, sir, for the record. But it simply doesn't happen. And so this EV subsidy is really poorly targeted, I'm afraid. I know it's meant well, it looks great on paper, and when you sit around with a load of officers who say, OK, let's look at all the research, you get whatever you want from it. As for the EV bikes, the uptake was poor. The EV cars come on Ireland, the uptake is poor. And we're giving up to £3,500 to somebody to buy a car which is around 25,000, 28,000, 30,000. Any advance on 30,000? I'm sorry, sir, but it is unnecessary. Whereas this money can be targeted towards a group in our society who will change their behaviour and may decide, do you know what? I'm going to pressure in the future to keep this going, and I'm going to use public transport. And so there is an additional movement that comes from public transport. You do walk to the bus stop, you do use it that way. And I'll tell you to the St Helier, Constable of St Helier, sir, whose opinion has changed within a couple of weeks, actually. I'm not sure why, I don't know what's happened in his life to make that happen, but it's certainly changed. That he was talking to me just the other week about how he would support this. It's a really good idea. That's changed. Okay, fine, we all change well, I don't, but others do change your mind on these things. But what about the nighttime economy in St Helier? If we can reduce the number of cars coming into St Helier because more people are using public transport, then what happens is it's easier to park for the people who live in St Helier, and more people may stay after work so they can go out for a drink and enjoy our social events in central St Helier. We're talking about developing the market. Now, how's that going to happen? Increasing parking? Because there isn't enough already. So we have to make these decisions. And this early decision, up to the age of 21, young people, get them in town, enjoying their social life. Let's give them something they can enjoy for once, rather than taxing them to the hilt, charging them more and more for the money that they have and rents they can't afford. So I'd like to thank Constable of St Martin, because the Constable and Deputy Lahegre, basically they got it, sir. They understand what we're talking about here. It's about cultural change. It's about enabling young people and saying to them, we want you to do this. And we're not going to say to you, do as I do as I say. We're going to say, here's a way to do it. There you go. You've got no excuse. So from years of dealing with young people, that's what you have to do if you're going to change their behaviour. You have to give them a reason to do it. And I also say to the Constable of St Helier, when he talks about the strategy for active travel, there was £1.4 million put aside for active travel in the plan last year. I brought it, the Constable didn't bring it. The future groups didn't bring it, sir, and the Constable's been on that, and he hasn't included us deputies, sir. I brought that, and there's still lots of that money left. So the first thing he could do as Assistant Chief Minister is start to spend that money appropriately. That would be a really good idea. So he can support this, sir, and have his money for active transport, might get some cars off the road and might actually encourage that. And as for a strategy, we've had more strategies than, I can't think of a single general now, sir. General MacArthur. We've had more strategies than anyone on transport. And I've got to say, sir, one of the few things that's actually taken any effect is the bus passes that we fought for and fought for and fought for. Very little else has. We just have paper documents and forests of documentation. Although now they're being digitised. Probably cost us £500,000 to digitise them, but there you go. Also, sir, we want to get young people travelling around town. No, we'll talk about that afterwards. Deputy Raneth, I thank him for his speech, although it was rather long. He talked about £800,000 being spent on EV cars and those situations. So we've given 800,000. I didn't quite get it, actually. I don't quite sure what the money is. It's very difficult to pick it out. That's an enormous amount of money being spent on a project that has no guarantee that we're taking any other cars off the road, has no guarantee we're lowering traffic, has no guarantee at all that those cars just aren't staying in a garage because they've been bought with a subsidy, has no guarantee at all that they're even being used in the way that we've said. Or they're not additional cars being bought for a family, as I've said, so the other more polluting car can be used. And when young people get to the age of 21, they might buy a car. But they're not going to buy a new EV. They're not going to buy a top-of-the-range car. They're going to buy a second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand, I don't know, Ford Fiesta was my first ever car. Ford Escort, actually, sir. Ford Escort. And a Ford Fiesta I bought over here, which I knew I had to get rid of because I stopped at the traffic lights and the lights fell out. That's the quality of that. And we still don't have MOT to deal with that properly, and that's what's going to happen. Whereas this project says to young people, you might not need to travel that quick. And I'll give you an example, sir. And I am going to take my time summing up. Let's enjoy it. I was in one of the secondary schools recently talking to about 32, 33 sixth form students, and we do this as part of one of the committee's groups, which name I've forgotten that. I'm not going to look at Deputy Alice because she's going to kill me for forgetting the name. We go in there and try and talk about politics and so on. And we started to talk about what projects are going on, and obviously they say, what is it that you actually do? And you desperately search around for something that you can say you talk about. And I say, well, in the government plan's coming up, and I talked about some of the other things that were coming to the government plan. I said about, well, I'm trying to extend the bus passes to 21. And one of the comments from one of the young people there, a really considered comment, was, actually, that's quite a good idea, because you start driving around that age, and some people aren't really that confident driving, and perhaps they'll have an option to not drive as much until they get their confidence built up. And it was a subtle, tiny little thing that I hadn't thought of, that young people had thought of. And that's the reason why we need to listen and respect young people and give them opportunity rather than just dismiss them. Deputy Jean, same line as Deputy Raneth. At least there's some unity in the Council of Ministers there. A small subsidy. I don't think this is a small subsidy for EV cars. It's a large subsidy. It's a lot of taxpayer money directed in the wrong way. It may be a small proportion of the price of a car. And this nudge theory, sir, I'm sorry, but I think we have to be very questioning of that. If somebody is going to buy a new car, so I bought an electric car because we needed to do something, we got a good deal, and it meant I could get rid of a diesel car. And I felt better about myself. I had that wonderful self moment saying, oh, I'm such a saviour of the universe, sir. Obviously I'm not, but you know, you have that little moment. That's one of the reasons that drives it. Deputy Meza, you're right, it changes behaviour. And a good point with scrappage. There was no scrappage system with the EVs, with the EV car scheme, and that's one of the biggest problems. So, sir, talking about this amendment, and I'll finish here, and then I hope people can vote in favour of this. There is a good point about being able to skate park facilities, for example, and transport yourselves out of there. And we need to look at the future. What is the future? We keep saying, oh, this has to be funded into the future. So what's the option? We stop. We make buses, we have a lot more buses, but the people do the calculations and say, actually, it's cheaper for me to drive, so I'll drive, which is what happens now. And unless we incentivise this on this small island, our roads are going to be packed. They may be packed with half electric cars soon, but you're still going to have a traffic jam. And this is about using public transport to its optimum. Yes, there are issues. If you can get into town but you can't get back after 6 o'clock, that's an issue for the bus company and the contract we're doing. It's nothing to do with providing this pass. And actually, sir, I'll finish by saying this. If it's so popular that people are complaining that there is not a bus to use, that's a sign of the success. That's why we should extend that. And I urge members to support something today that is positive for the young people of this island and positive for the environment. So I thank you, everyone, and ask for the appeal. Thank you, sir.
As called for, invite members to return to their seats. The vote is on Amendment 8. I ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The amendment has been defeated. 16 votes pour, 28 votes contre, 1 abstention.
Those members voting pour, the Connétables of St Martin and St Mary, Deputies Southern, Tadia, Luce, Lehegara, Rob Ward, Alves, Farnham, Mesick, Coles, Borre, Catherine Curtis, Feltham, Kovac and Barbara Ward.
The final amendment to be debated before we resume with the government plan is that of Deputy Ward, the 9th Amendment, and I ask the greffier to read the amendment.
Page 3, paragraph L. After the words Appendix 3 to the report, insert the words, except that on page 91, after the words previously agreed increases in fuel duty, there should be inserted the words £1 million of the funding allocated from the Climate Emergency Fund for the 2022-2025 carbon neutral roadmap budget will be moved from the TR1 policy subsidising electric vehicles and e-bikes to finance a trial scheme to subsidise Avanti card annual unlimited bus passes by 1, covering £295 of the total cost of £495 per annual bus pass, and 2, offering these subsidised bus passes to the public in tranches of 1,000. Such trial to commence on the 1st of January 2024 and to be reviewed after 6 months to assess the extent of uptake.
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. This is perhaps the most important change to our travel we've discussed for some time. We've been through the argument over EVs, and I think people have. I'm going to go through it again. This is a very expensive, undirected subsidy for people who don't need this subsidy to buy a car. So the amendment is more accessible to a much wider range of the population and subsequently a better use of the limited resources that we have. From the comments paper, which I don't think is very good, there are just 152 annual bus passes issued by the bus company. This amendment provides the ability to provide tranches of 1,000 subsidised bus passes at a cost of £290, £5 from the fund, and every person who wants to buy one would have to spend £200 themselves. That takes the cost of travel to around 50 pence per day. That's important because you provide a year's bus pass. When you look at monthly bus passes, people are buying monthly bus passes for a couple of months at a time and then not using them at all. And so their transport use for public transport they want to use is sporadic and not consistent. Where are they going to after that? Probably the car, probably into a traffic jam, probably into the centre of St Helier to fill our car parks. This is an opportunity to say to the wider public, as a trial, reviewed in 6 months to see the uptake of this, something that's not happening with other schemes, and say to people, you can buy a bus pass. So I'm not going to go on for a long time because I promised I wouldn't. It's targeted, it's specific, a much needed change that can impact positively to change travel behaviour in all adults. The change provides a regular and trackable income for the bus company, a regular and trackable income for the bus company. The bus company still receive the full amount of a yearly bus pass and they know how many people are travelling. That makes it easier to specify which sort of buses we want, when we want them and where we want them. It's a much more intelligent way to do it. It also allows us to look at travel patterns so that the bus company has the best opportunity to provide the best service. So I'm not going to say any more now because I know we're going to have the debate, so I look forward to hearing the same arguments, but we'll see how we go. I ask members to be brief in their comments again, and I open the debate on the amendment. Thank you, sir, and I make the amendment.
Is the amendment seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. I resisted speaking on the first one, knowing the second amendment by Deputy Ward was coming, and it sort of all stems around the same thing when we're looking to reduce our island's carbon emissions. I did find it interesting listening to the last debate that we're worried about our local class 1 and 2 emissions from vehicles on the roads, but we seem to always forget about our class 3, which is where these EV cars and electric bikes and all that are all made somewhere else in the world. They then get the class 1 and 2 contributions. We pick up a little bit of the class 3 because it's a bit it's very, very broad how they count our carbon emissions and not count our carbon emissions. But as Deputy Ward said previously, that we're not going to see a reduction in cars on the road unless we do something proper and really generally encourage people out of their cars. It's interesting, we received a news release a while ago about the sustainable transport policy, and I'm highlighted with the fact that it says 68 people who live and work in St Helier walk to work. 68%, that's a good number. But of course that also means 32% of people that live and work within St Helier use some other form of transport. Now this doesn't say whether it's a bus or whether it's their own car, but the town link service around town, unless you're a pensioner, isn't commercially viable for a lot of individuals to actually just hop on and hop off. Because unless you have an Avicii card, an unlimited annual pass or an unlimited monthly pass, it costs you £2 a journey for a short jaunt around town. Now, for a lot of people who have mobility issues, there is the people who think, well, you know, I'll just get my car. I've got it. I've got the space. I can just hop on in my car and I can park and then I can drive it back. And it seems such a wasted journey. Whereas actually more access to the unlimited Avicii pass at a discounted rate might encourage more people to change those habits. And this is what we are encouraging, is the change of habits. So people then will go, oh, do you know, I can just tap and go. I mean, you go to London with a contactless card, you can hop on and off public transport all day, and depending which zone you go in and out of, it doesn't cost you more than £3.50 for an entire day's worth of travel. So this kind of unlimited Avicii card is actually very, very good value for money. However, we have to change the habit to get people to start using it. And I think it's very, very clever the way the Deputy Ward has posed this, that the end user would have to pay £200 of their own money, because I fell for this trap. I just bought myself a gym membership because the gym that I've now joined offered me a discounted membership from £500 to £300 for a year. And so I have signed up, and I am now dedicating myself, even during this day sitting. People might have seen me running out of the back door because I had an hour and a half to get to the gym, have a workout and have a shower and get back. Because when people actually contribute some of their own money, it really does make them think about what they are doing and the changes that they can make. And then I hope so that obviously when my year's membership comes to an end, that maybe that deal's back on and I'll sign up again, or I'll end up paying full price. But my habits will have changed. I will be back in doing something that is good for me. And in this sense, it will be good to have people on the bus and doing something that's good for the environment. It will reduce traffic on the road. It will make people then who don't want to catch the bus feel safer in cycling. Let's say 1,000 people for one of these applicants. How many car journeys is that? How much traffic is that coming along St Albans Road in the morning from St Brellards, where the traffic is probably the worst? Going past schools, because it will cut the emissions in and around schools, because some people who didn't need to take their car because they have put £200 of their own money and will incentivise them to start seeing that actually catching the bus can work. I mean, I've changed my practices in the last 6 months because a change in my own circumstances meant that now I can car share with my wife into work, but she finishes at different times because she's self-employed and works late into the evenings. So that means on the days we come in together, I go home on the bus now, and it's, unless the Conatable of Grooville gives me a lift as he picks me up at a bus stop on his way home. But I'm being more conscious in his EV vehicle, I'll put out, so there's no emissions coming from the Constable of Grooville, not yet anyway. But you have to take conscious efforts to make a change in practice. And sometimes just a little incentive to nudge you on your way or kick you in the right direction is what we need to do. And I feel this will benefit us in the long run and reduce congestion. And let's face it, not everybody drives an EV car as safe, in the same way that we seem to think that if more people are on EV cars, then actually they're safer, because will that encourage more people to cycle? Because it doesn't. It's still congestion. It's still vehicles on the road. It's still one person in a car taking up space. So I urge members to support this. Let people contribute some of their own money, but let's help them with the initiative and move this forward. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Deputy Tadier.
Thanks, sir. I know that members will feel that a lot of the arguments to be made here are similar to the ones made in the previous debate, but I don't think they're entirely similar. And of course, one I forgot to make in the previous debate, partly because I was only speaking to make sure that other people had the opportunity to speak, was about the efficacy of the current scheme we've got. I think this is one where I think the current Council of Ministers can and should have a bit of humility and put their hands up and say, look, we were trying something out here. We had a pot of money from the Environmental Fund, Climate Change Fund, which we thought we'd just give to the middle classes in Jersey to help them buy some electric cars and electric bikes. But actually, we've realised we've got that wrong. It's not being taken up to the extent we thought, and it's also targeting the wrong people here. So we're going to roll back on that, and we're actually going to put it to the people that we really want to affect change with, and that is ultimately getting people out of their cars. Because I saw this great sketch, a cartoon a few months back, and it showed a vehicle on the road, and it had all the negative effects that that vehicle had. I won't list them all, but one of them was the fact that you get collisions with cars, people get run over by cars, that there is rubber pollution from the tyres, that the manufacturer of the cars is in itself polluting, and the only one single difference is that it doesn't have an exhaust pipe. But all of the other issues that you get, congestion, traffic jams, and parking issues, all of those things you still get with electric vehicles. And even before the scheme came in, I apologise if I've said this before, I may have said it outside the Assembly, I'm not sure if I've said it inside. A wealthy neighbour of mine said to me, I'm thinking of getting an electric vehicle, but my son's told me not to do it quite yet because there's a subsidy scheme coming in. So I'm going to wait a few months. In fact, he saw that in the JEP a couple of days later. So he said, I'm not going to buy an electric vehicle now. He's got lots of money to do it. He wanted to do it. He'd already made the decision economically and from an ecological point of view, that's the behaviour he wanted to do. But why wouldn't he do it if he was going to be £3,000 richer? He didn't get rich by being stupid. And if the government are handing out £3,000 to people who don't need it, he's going to say, thank you very much. I'll stick that in the pocket. And, you know, I could buy all of my kids a full bus pass for the year and still have maybe £2,000 left over for that. That's the irony of this thing. So this is well targeted, and I can really testify to Deputy Cole's words there about building a habit. It doesn't take long to build habits, and it's even better if they're good habits, sir. And a long time ago, I realised that you could get an Avanci card. And I got myself a pay-as-you-go Avanci card because I realised that you save 25p with every journey. Better than paying on your credit card, and even better than paying, or your debit card, even better than paying cash, which is more expensive. But that didn't really change my behaviour, because I just would keep that in my wallet, and I'd still mostly take my petrol moped. I would sometimes get a lift in with my wife, or I'd take the car if she was cycling to work, and it was most convenient for me. I'd just leave exactly when I wanted to. I'd get my free parking when I came to town, whether that was for the car or for the moped, and if I'm doing it, there'll be other people working in different industries who've got access to free parking, and it will be a financial calculation for them, not just an ecological one in those decisions that they're making. So I think this incentive, which is really bringing it down to an affordable amount, especially for people who might be what I would call the opposite of fair weather bus users. They only tend to use the bus when it's not very nice weather. They may have other methods of transport from April to October when it's largely sunny, when it's largely not raining. But when the wind and the wet comes in, they want to use the bus. It might actually incentivise them to make that full purchase for the year, which only costs them £200. But they're still paying for it. That's the point. It's still money that they're given. And so what I did is I invested in a monthly Avanci card. And it's got the beauty of me not needing to worry when I get on the bus, or sorry, where I get on the bus, where I get off the bus, and to plan my day. So if I'm coming to town, or I'm coming back home from town, I know exactly what time my bus is. And I was saying to someone the other day, unusually I had access to the car for one day, but I was still in the routine of looking at my watch. It was coming up to 5:20. I was sitting in the computer room in the States. It was about 5:10, and I thought, I better get ready because I've got to get on the bus. Then I realised I didn't need to. I could stay another 25 minutes. And when I'm on the bus, I've realised that there's a community on that bus, because it doesn't take you long to realise you know who's going to get on at the next stop. You know who's going to get off at these stops. You know when the seats are going to become available, and you can sit down after 10 minutes of riding the bus up wherever it is you're going. And sometimes you don't see that person on the bus, and you wonder, I wonder where that person is today. And then the next time you see them on the bus, you say, are you okay? And they say, no, I've just been a bit ill. And you strike up those conversations. So, and the last point, there isn't an argument between pedestrians, cyclists and bus users. These things are very fluid. So I like to say that a bus user is just a pedestrian who's having a rest. Yeah? And sometimes I will deliberately get off the bus a little bit early because I want to stop at my local shop, which I know is only 5 minutes down the road, and then I'll go to the shop and I'll walk back. If you're in a car, you won't do that. You'll plan to get as close to the shop as you can, and then you'll get back in your car, and you won't be meeting the same people that you do because of that. So I would say that the advantages of this scheme here get the right balance between the cost that the user needs to pay, between the behaviour change that we want to see, and it also has all those other fringe benefits, which I think we all want to see about place making and more cohesive community in Jersey. So I do ask members who might not have supported the last proposal to certainly consider supporting this one. It is a different beast in nature. It's not about free bus travel, it's about actually subsidising bus travel. The last point I would make, sir, is that it doesn't mean we have a perfect bus system. I think we've got a very good bus service. The most important thing is that it's very reliable. I've only really seen one bus come late in the last year when I've been using it. The gripes that I do have, sir, which I think this proposition may actually help with in the longer term, is the fact that there needs to be more buses, even to the country destinations around the peak times, because they do get very full in the mornings and in the evenings. We need to think about better bus stops, because the bus stop that I use, I've nearly had my head knocked off a couple of times because there's no lay-by, there's no bus stop, and the bus is reluctant to go on the other side of the road, so I've got a bus passing me like that, which is, if I'm scared by that, I'm sure a lot of other members of the public using the bus will be scared by that. And I think when we encourage more people to use the buses, the demand for a better bus service will necessarily follow, whether it's for more frequency, better connectivity to Trinity. Fully agree with that. Trinity's got a really good bus route to the zoo. If you want to get the number 23, you can get to the zoo after 11 o'clock at night. But if you don't live around the zoo and you live in the main part of Trinity, that's not much good to you. So I do sympathise with the Constable of Trinity. And what I would say to him is that by voting for this proposition, you will put pressure on the Transport Minister, and you will also give the necessary encouragement and extra funding to Liberty Bus to actually reinvest in the service and create those better links where there are currently lacunas in the system. So, but it's not a reason in itself to vote against it.
Does any other member wish to... Colin Harbison-Tellier.
Thank you, sir. I'm afraid Deputy Tellier is simply wrong. His last two points seem to me to be missing the point that if we spend this money in this subsidy that's being requested, the Constable of Trinity is less likely to see a bus strategy emerging with money to spend on a late bus to Trinity. And equally, Deputy Coles talked about the problems with the Town Link bus service, and as a regular user of it, which is a shocking admission given where I live in Valplaisant, down to the States building, I can be here on the bus about the same time it takes to walk, which in itself indicates something, I think. But there are problems with the Town Link. We don't always know when it's coming, and it is far too expensive for someone who hasn't reached the magic age of 65 and can hop on it and off it for nothing. The Town Link service needs improvement. But the best way to improve it is not to spend this money on the subsidy, but to leave the Minister for Infrastructure with the money he needs to improve the bus service in a way that will benefit all the parishes and all the constables' parishes. This, after all, like so many amendments to the government plan, is a matter of confidence. Do we have confidence in the Minister for Infrastructure to improve the transport system? Now, if you'd asked me that question a couple of years ago, in fact, any time in the last 20 years, I would have to have said no, because I'm afraid, with all due respect to some present members who've had that portfolio, we haven't seen much progress. We haven't seen many practical improvements. But I do have confidence in the current Minister to make radical and timely improvements in the bus service. And I would rather he has a full pot of money to do that with, rather than us deciding that he's going to have to spend part of it on a particular subsidy. And of course, what's changed since the last debate on Deputy Ward's previous proposition, and I join others in commending him for his support of the bus service, particularly for young people, but what's changed since the last debate is the Minister has come online and he's agreed to reprioritise some of that money in the Climate Change Fund that would have gone for electric vehicle subsidy. I'm heartened by that, and I think that is another reason why we should allow the Minister for Environment, the Minister for Infrastructure, and I'll certainly be pushing behind the scenes, we should allow them to get on with it and to make these dramatic improvements in active travel in our island that we all want to see. So I won't be supporting the amendment. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak? Deputy Binet. Tom Binet.
Thank you, sir. I thought it might be an appropriate point to come in after the constable, and I'd like to thank him for that vote of confidence in the work that's going on. Furthermore, I'd like to thank members very sincerely for the previous vote. Over the lunch hour, I was trying to think about how I felt, and I felt a tiny bit, while I was talking, I felt like a man trying to give away fruit and veg outside of a pub at closing time when I'm standing next to Deputy Ward with John Perignon wrapped in £50 notes being given away to everybody, and I honestly didn't think anybody was going to take any notice of what I had to say in my little speech. It actually, I'm afraid I'm not the best speech maker. There was nothing clever in what I had to say, but it had taken me some time to put it together. Hold on a second.
We seem to have lost you, Deputy. Deputy Binet? Deputy Binet?
Apologies, sir. That's one of the drawbacks of working from home. And I've completely lost my thread. Yes, I was just thanking everybody for listening to the facts, sir, because it took me a little while to put that together. And I would just ask the Assembly, if there was something to be gained by taking the easy option, why would I not have done that myself? Make myself very popular by giving everything away free, but that's not the way things need to be done, sir. So I'm just very grateful, and I hope that people take the same approach to this amendment as well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? No other member wishes to speak on the amendment? Then I close. Sorry? Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. I shall take on board the kind advice from Deputy Ward and make this speech much shorter. Just to clarify a couple of points that people keep making some points about the EV subsidy and so on. There is no scrappage scheme, people have pointed out. There's no scrappage scheme accompanying the EV scheme, and that is for a very good reason. It was originally in the carbon neutral roadmap, but the states voted to remove it. It was removed from the carbon neutral roadmap following a vote in the Assembly. So if we had done a scrappage scheme, we would have been acting against the will of the Assembly. I would like to also remind members that Deputy Tadia, Deputy Ward, and the other members of our Reform Jersey who were in the Assembly did vote for that carbon neutral roadmap, which did include policy TR1, which did include the EV incentive. And, you know, I don't think it could be argued either that it kind of snuck by them without them noticing, because Deputy Ward actually successfully amended that particular policy. So, but there is, the thing I've tried to make, point I tried to make in my previous speech was that we need a full spectrum approach to decarbonisation. That is the aim of the Climate Emergency Fund. It's to fund decarbonisation, and EVs and e-bikes, I've submitted a part of that, but not the whole part. And there is something else to put into the balance, which I mentioned, but which I would like to briefly elaborate. Namely, that when we had hoped when we launched the EV incentive and the e-bike incentives that they would be counterbalanced, if you like, by funding for the sustainable transport policy. We'd hoped to secure funding for the sustainable transport policy, but that hasn't happened over 2 government plans now. So we have to face that reality. And so, as I said in my last speech, I do recognise the need for a change of direction, given that we have not been able to secure funding for the sustainable transport. So I do want to be clear. I want to redirect money from the EV and e-bike incentives to sustainable transport, because there is no other plausible government revenue source that is going to go towards sustainable transport over the next few years. And I do agree with those who say that we have talked for too long about sustainable transport without acting. As I say, the aim was that that should have been counterbalanced by money for the sustainable transport policy, but we have to face the fact that within tight spending rounds, we don't always get what we want. And I think it is clear that people feel that there is money available through a different mechanism, i.e. the Climate Emergency Fund, and that is what we should do. And that is why I will now be intending to work with the Infrastructure Minister, with the Constable of St Helier, and with others who have interest in this area to give effect to that desire. I can't say exactly how it will work out yet, because it's work that we recognise now, having, as I say, recognised the need for now, knowing that we haven't got the funding we would have liked, ideally, for a sustainable transport policy. So the aim is to use the Climate Emergency Fund more for that purpose, and therefore I do not feel that it should be used in the way that Deputy Ward is suggesting in this amendment to subsidise bus passes. And I think it's quite interesting. My one take on this, looking at the figures around bus passes, is that we do have a very successful take-up of weekly and monthly bus passes. As far as I can see, very successful figures for those. I think 6,600 for weekly and 1 weekly travel passes in circulation. So it doesn't seem to me that price is the particular barrier for bus passes. They are taken up by people possibly using 4 weekly and 1 weekly ones because it's more flexible and more likely reflects the way that they're likely to use the bus. So I do feel that if we start subsidising annual bus passes in this way, that we do risk subsidising the number of people who already do, subsidising people who already use them rather than incentivising new users. So there's two reasons there why I think we shouldn't support this amendment. One is because I don't support the use of the source of funding, but also I don't think it's a good use of money in terms of trying to achieve the objective that the deputy is trying to achieve. And members will no doubt be delighted that I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Connie Harbison, Saviour.
Thank you, sir. I would like to support this, sir, but I'm afraid I can't. It's obviously very well intended. The bus contract is up for renewal, and I wish the Infrastructure Minister well, because I know negotiations are, I believe, probably underway by now. They are an exceptionally good company that we have at the moment, and as I say, I wish everybody well. I can't finish without referring to my colleague behind me. We had a bad rock fall up in the top end of town a few years ago, and the constable did send me a very nice letter. And I thought, I'm going to frame that. There won't be another one, which there hasn't. I'll bring it in tomorrow to show members. Got Jersey's answer to Victor Meldrew. I did give the constable a lift the other day because I didn't want him to wait too long for a bus in the rain, but there we go. I'll leave it there. So I would like to support this, but unfortunately I can't. But I'm sure it's well intended. Thanks, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? No other member wishes to speak on the amendment, then I close the debate and call upon Deputy Ward to respond.
Thank you, sir. And I had a terrible moment of deja vu then. We've gone back a few years because we are going backwards, let's be honest. I think I'd heard that story before, sir, from Constable Saviour. I'd heard the Constable of St Helier's views before, although they've been different a few times. Different every time, actually, depending on what position he takes up. And that's a really sad thing to be, sir. I find that unfortunate because this is something that will directly improve St Helier. This is targeted. This is targeted to a specific group, not to people who can afford an EV car. And it's very interesting to hear the Environment Minister saying he's going to work with the Infrastructure Minister in the coming months and make money for the sustainable transport policy, because there isn't any money for the sustainable transport policy. But at the same time, he's going to vote against something that puts money towards sustainable transport from a project that isn't working and is misdirected and not targeted. He can't do that. There is no logic to the arguments there. So I'm tempted to say we don't even know who we'll have as infrastructure minister or government from January onwards, to be quite frank. So I think any promises as to what's going to happen in the future, and again, it's always in the future. I'm getting deja vu again. I just remember looking back, talking about buses about 5 years ago and saying nothing happens. We just talk and talk and talk and talk. And then when a reasoned, intelligent, targeted, funded, costed, specific, time-specific, testing policy comes forward, an amendment, we go leaping around looking for red herrings for reasons that you can't support it. And all of you people, so all of the people in this assembly, sorry sir, the deputies, who claim to be independents, then take a party line with government using a debate which is absolutely illogical, sir. We're talking about, now if you vote against this, you are saying to the public, I want to give money to people so they can buy an EV car, which is around £30,000. I'm quite happy to earn £3,500 per car to give to them, give that away, taxpayers' money, here you go. Enjoy yourself, knock yourself out. We have no idea what it's doing. But I'm not willing to donate £295 to up to 1,000 people to say, you have greater access to our transport system. And the arguments are, but the buses might need more buses. What's the next argument, sir? If a sustainable transport policy and people start walking, we might need more pavements. We might need more air for people because they're breathing deeper. What's the argument coming? I can see those red herring arguments coming along. And we have for too long in this assembly listened, sir, to these irrelevant, misguided, misplaced, inaccurate arguments against policy that could have changed the lives of people on this island. For £295,000, you can impact on 1,000 people's travel habits. That is a bargain. They are paying £200 themselves. They have to buy into this. But for many of you who aren't even listening to the argument, you're not even considering the argument, because you've been told what to do, you have to now go and speak to your constituents and say, I would rather...
Through the chair.
Sorry, sir. For those... apologies, sir. It's been a long week. I do apologise. I'm usually quite okay at that. I quite like it, actually. You've got to go and say to your constituents, I don't want you to have this subsidy, even though you have absolutely no access to an electric car and you will never be part of that subsidy. You don't have a chance because you can't come up with the other £24,000 needed. So that's not for you. Now, you might use a bus pass where you have to pay £200 a year, but I'm not subsidising that for you because I don't think that's the way our sustainable transport policy should go. And then when they ask the question, sir, what's our sustainable transport policy? You can answer, oh, well, we don't have one. But, sir, they can say it's safe in the hands of the Infrastructure Minister and the new Assistant Chief Minister. Don't worry. Even though we've seen nothing before and there's not a lot of hope for the future, we can do that. I hope you have that discussion with your constituents. Because I will say to my... sorry, sir. I hope deputies have that discussion with their constituents because I'm going to have that discussion. And I will say, I wanted you to have a subsidy so that you can travel cheaper. So those people, sir, who get up early in the morning and might be travelling out for their first job of the day, who use public transport, we could have taken the cost of their transport down to £200 a year, 50p a day, targeted towards a section of our population, sir, who need it most, But we're not going to do that today because of the same old tired, untested, unreasoned, illogical, and to be quite frank, sir, unevidenced arguments that have been thrown at this assembly for too long. And, sir, it's tiresome. It's tiresome that people will come in here and not actually enter in the debate that they say that they're elected to do. So I want you to have that conversation with your constituents. I also want to say, sir, there are some other points just to finish off. The town hopper will not work unless it is subsidised and it's either free or people can get access to a pass. It is not worth £2 something for a short journey. Therefore, people are more likely to take their car. And it is short journeys that are the problem for us. If you're driving across the island, it may always be, particularly about some sort of disability or some sort of access issue, it may always be that you're going to need to bring a car in some form. And we have to address that later on. But for short journeys, sir, out from First Tower, out from St Clement, it's areas around there, people tend to bring their car because the bus is more expensive, it's effectively nearly £5 return. So you may as well bring your car, park for a couple of hours and go home. If you've invested, sir, in a bus pass that's been subsidised by government, you are much more likely to not do that. And it's those journeys that we can impact upon for St Helier. And I'm so disappointed at Constable of St Helier of not supporting St Helier in this way. This provides a consistent income for the bus company. It could provide £495,000 of income with the combination of the subsidy and what people are buying for their bus pass, sir, per 1,000 of people. Now, if you get 10,000 people using a bus pass in that way, if it becomes successful and is extended, that's £4.9 million for a bus company. We're getting the change of behaviour that we want, and there's the investment that can be made. That makes economic sense. But no, this assembly instead will listen to unreasoned, unevidenced, illogical arguments in order to just dismiss something. Sir, family travel becomes an affordable option. I have a vision, sir. I was told by the last Chief Minister I was obsessed with buses. That's not fair. I did invite him for a bus journey after that, but there you go. But I have a vision, sir. It's a family, sir. It's a lovely vision. It's a family where the two adults have their £200 bus pass and the children have their £10 bus pass, and they travel together on the bus around the island, enjoying our beautiful island without taking their car. Perhaps the Constable of St Helier can join me in that vision of his country park, where he won't have to build a huge car park to go with it, but he'll have a bus transport system that people will use to go to the park and enjoy it. But that's another thing that's been suggested but hasn't happened. There are benefits to this for families. And we are dismissing this out of hand if we're not careful, and it's a mistake. It also, sir, there's been a lot of talk about park and ride schemes. So you park on the outskirts of a town somewhere and drive in. Now, you're either going to have to provide a subsidised journey, ironically, or if these passes already exist, people are more likely to park their car, use their bus pass, get into town and back. This is part of an integrated system. And what we're doing, yet again, with our transport policy is saying we've got to come up with every single aspect of it before we start, and we do nothing. As opposed to making the step. And this is a trial for 6 months. If it doesn't work, you come back, say it hasn't worked, nobody's taken it up, and I will stand up and say, that's a shame, I thought it was a really good idea. It's as simple as that. Then you can put the money into something else. I don't know, electric scooters. But let's not bring that one up, sir. And this is money that's already being spent. So the Minister keeps talking about from the Infrastructure Minister's budget. It's not from the Infrastructure Minister's budget. It's from the Climate Emergency Fund. So just like earlier with graphs, can't read a graph, ministers can't understand where their money's coming from. Please, if you're going to argue with something, use the correct argument. If this was a debating society, sir, you'd lose. And I, for one, so I'm tired of winning the debate and winning the argument and then losing the vote. I'm tired of it. So this time, sir, I want to say to people, you need to really think about why you're voting against this. Not the red herrings, not the unevident stuff. Let's think about the benefits of this to so many people on this island, 1,000 people at a time, and see what change that could make in our transport around the island and what benefits that could bring for the traffic levels around the island and for us all. You may even want to spend £200 on a pass yourself. Sir, I urge members to vote for something and finish this debate with a positive. Finish this 5 days with something positive to go away from, so we can go and stand outside and say, we've made one change for people. You've got cheaper transport around this island if you want to pay your part of it. So I urge members to vote for this, and I call for the appel.
Votes called for. I invite members to return to their seats. The vote is on the 9th amendment. I ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their vote. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The amendment has been defeated. 17 votes for, 29 votes contra, no abstentions.
Those members voting for, the Conotab of St Martin, Grouville and St Mary, Deputies Southern, Tadier, Luce, Lehegarat, Rob Ward, Owls, Farnham, Mesick, Coles, Porray, Catherine Curtis, Beltham, Kovat and Andrews.
Very well. We've dealt with all of the amendments and we resume debate on the government plan. Deputy Mesick.
Thank you, sir. When the government plan was first lodged, it was described as boring, but 4.5 days into this debate, who can possibly maintain such a position? Sir, looking at the government plan and the opening pages to it, it's very striking how little in the way of bright ideas that this government has to take Jersey forward. And so I'm going to go through some of them. In the government plan 24 to 27, delivering on our priorities page, that's page 5, it lists through the strategic priorities and then begins to list measures next to them. And I want to highlight some of them, I think, to show how out of place they are in this government plan. Housing and cost of living. One of the points it raises is increasing the rate of home ownership with £10 million of government support. Not this government plan, that was several government plans ago. Next is improving standards of rental properties through the new landlord licensing scheme. That's a licensing scheme, not a registration scheme, the Housing Minister may be interested to know. Again, sir, not this government plan, something that's been on the table for a substantial amount of time. Next, sir, we go into economy and skills. It talks about implementing a new economic strategy which will help ensure islanders enjoy the same standard of living in 2040 as they do today. Wow, what a high aspiration to say, sir, that in the next 17 years, things aren't going to get any better. I wonder how they managed to let that one slip, although credit when that economic strategy document did come out, it found a very different form of words and a better form of words on that. Hopefully that has superseded this document. Children and families. It refers to £2.6 million new funding for frontline services to support children and young people. That excludes teachers, quite clearly, who are going to be subjected to continued pay freezes over the years. Ageing population, reinstating £57 million government funding to the Social Security Fund to support the state pension. Well, they are now, after suffering a defeat on that they opposed. Health and well-being, continued funding for reduced GP fees funded from the health insurance scheme, something delivered in the defeat of the last government plan and not a unique thing in this plan itself. And then again, the next one, focus on recruitment and retention of frontline staff in health and education. I mean, it's almost laughable, isn't it? Environment, responding to the climate emergency through initiatives such as the e-bike scheme and low carbon heating incentive. Again, sir, something originating well before this government plan document itself. Speeding up Jersey's transition to electric vehicles to the electric vehicle purchase scheme. Again, sir, preceding this plan. And lastly, under community, dedicating 1% of government spending to arts, heritage and culture. Again, a preceding government plan that achieved that, not this one. So if there were bright ideas on how to take Jersey forward, you'd think that that page would have been packed full of them, but instead they recycle ideas and policies from previous governments and previous government plans on this page because they don't have enough bright ideas to fill the page themselves. And so we ought to be clear about the situation Jersey faces when deciding whether this government plan is set up to meet those challenges. We know, sir, that we are facing a prolonged freeze in real terms living standards. That, in fairness, predates this government. That's been going on for a decade now. So when asking the Chief Minister what in this plan specifically would help reduce income inequality, she referred to the raising of tax allowances. And when pushed on that, sir, the Chief Minister, and we've had this in the Assembly a couple of times, doesn't seem to realise that raising tax allowances does not make the poorest people in Jersey better off because they're already beneath the tax thresholds. Their tax can't be lowered anymore, and increasing allowances, actually in terms of monetary value, the people who most benefit from that are the people who are at the upper end of marginal relief. If there were something to help reduce income inequality, that would have been in this plan, but is not highlighted in it. We have in recent weeks seen the statistics from Statistics Jersey about people leaving Jersey who showed, and this was very different to the trend that there was previously, but in 2 most recent years, around 900 locally qualified people per year had left. If that becomes a trend, this island is doomed, because we will see more and more of our bright and talented young people seeking lives elsewhere. That is an emergency and something that has to be reversed. And we know, sir, the biggest thing that could be done to help reverse it, that would be to resolve Jersey's housing crisis, which we know is the #1 biggest contributory factor for causing people to live in poverty. So in this government plan, there is a line that refers to subsidising social housing. And I'm so angry to see that line in there because in Jersey, we don't subsidise social housing. Social housing subsidises the government because we get a £30 million return from Andium Homes, but the benefits that we pay to tenants of Andium Homes is only £20 million. So actually it's social housing tenants who are subsidising government, not the other way round. And so when we look at the debate we've had this week on some of the initiatives that could be done further to help relieve that crisis and help more young people into home ownership, we get told, no, we can't abolish interest relief on buy-to-let mortgages without having not just a review, but a review and a consultation, and delay that by another year anyway. So much for the relentless focus there. So we can't divert the funding from the stamp duty surcharge and buy-to-let investment properties into the first-time buyer fund because that might upset the market. I mean, the market's pretty upset as it is already. An extra £2 million to support first-time buyers, that would apparently be a negative thing for those. It would be almost laughable if it weren't so upsetting. And so we continue to see ourselves in a position where we're being asked, on the one hand, to maintain real terms pay cuts to all of our public servants, as it happens, sir, but particularly those teachers who are raising with us the great difficulties they think their profession is facing. There's no money for that, but we're asked, sir, to provide another £52 million to proceed with the new healthcare facilities. £52 million, that is, which is not actually involving building the thing, it's more preparatory work for it, after successive governments and states assemblies have already wasted over £100 million on it. And sir, they won't even tell us the full details of their plans in that regard, including how much they think they're going to spend on the programme as a whole. And we've seen from scrutiny, comments back to scrutiny today that they still don't intend on doing that. And so if you want to spend large amounts of money on those things or not spend money on some of the things that many of us think ought to be prioritised, perhaps we could all at least agree that finding genuine savings and efficiencies in government, which we all know is desperately needed and which we all know there are areas that spend lots of money that we can't immediately identify as being justifiable. Instead, the government comes up with targets for savings in their value for money programme without being able to substantiate a single penny of it to give us confidence that it will lead to genuine savings rather than end up putting pressure on government departments to make cutbacks. And so, sir, many parts of this plan feel like a work of fiction that when we come together a year from now won't really resemble the experience we've had in that time. How many of these budgets will be stuck to, how many of those proposed savings will genuinely be made, and how many problems will we see having mounted in that time that we'll have to resolve then as well. So on that basis, and here's the shocker, sir, I don't think I'll vote for this government plan. I'm sure members are really shocked to hear that. In particular, sir, I would hope, and I may well be being optimistic here, I would hope, sir, that the government would be prepared to take some of these in different parts, and not just for my benefit, sir, but they ought to, out of decency, take Part B separate, because Part B refers to a new tax. It refers to giving them the ability to go away and do work on a new tax, which if members are forced to vote for in the grand scheme of the package of government plan proposals, even though members may themselves not actually desire that part, we may be sending the government off to do lots of work only to have them fall at the last hurdle when they come back to this assembly. And so I certainly would not support Part B in any shape or form. In fact, even if the amendment I brought to it had been accepted, because underpinning Part B and their desire to introduce a waste disposal tax is an acknowledgement, and they know this deep down inside, sir, that Jersey's tax and spend model is broken. They're not raising the revenue they need to provide the services that they know they need to provide. They're too scared to tamper with the headline income tax rate because of the delusions they have about its importance to Jersey's reputation. So instead, sir, we get stealth taxes, stealth charges, and vague commitments or statements in the government plan about those future revenue-raising measures. Whether it's a waste disposal tax, which they can't tell us a single detail about the shape or form it will take or who will end up paying it and what amounts they'll be paying on it, or the commitments they're prepared to actually make to relax some people who may have concerns about it, not prepared to do that. There's the revenue to be raised for sustainable health funding, which on the floor of this Assembly on multiple occasions we've asked ministers to rule out regressive health charging policies, because we know, sir, that it's those with the lowest incomes that often have the most difficult time with their health outcomes, and greater financial pressure on them will exacerbate that for them. And we get no guarantees on that regard either, and so can have no confidence that we won't end up in a situation soon like the 2014 to 18 Ian Gorse-led austerity government, which attempted to bring those regressive taxes forward. So, sir, we find ourselves with a government plan we're being asked to support now that lacks any coherent vision for solving the big crises that Jersey faces, which has virtually nothing to say on the number one crisis facing the island, which is the housing crisis, apart from one referral to something that was actually secured several years ago. And so it contains at its heart a refusal to accept what every right-thinking person knows, which is that our spending model and our taxing model don't go together and are not working properly. So I think that it's time that Jersey had a genuine better way, not the sham that we have right now, which has claimed to be a better way, but has turned out to be more of the same. And I suggest to members that they vote against this government plan and send them back to the drawing board.
Does any other member wish to speak on the government plan as amended? Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. I would again like to thank the Council of Ministers for accepting the Economic and International Affairs amendments that have led to the freeze of fuel duty, and partially accepting the freeze, in other words, to not quite increase as much the alcohol duty. Overall, though, I do feel that this is another plan that is basically about taxing more, putting more costs on industry, despite the difficulties that they are facing in terms of so many inflationary costs. And I do believe that the government should be considering much more how it itself can be contributing to this inflation. And I believe many people would be disappointed in terms of that general kind of philosophy about, well, let's spend more and get some more tax. I actually do agree with a lot that Deputy May said. And I think coming back to when he was looking at the part of the government plan that was talking about delivering on priorities, again, it mentioned supporting technological innovation through the Impact Jersey scheme. We've not really seen much apart from supporting search operation and very sort of minor things in that respect. I suppose a lot more might be being promised, but I'd be interested to see how that does improve economic productivity. And it also referred to this new investment in the rural marine sectors. As we know, a lot more has gone in that area now as a result of Deputy Lewis's proposition, and I hope he can accept that's positive in that respect. It also mentions implementing a new economic strategy which will help ensure islanders enjoy the same standard of living in 2020 as they do today. well, that's a really big promise, but it's going to be very difficult to deliver when so many people seem to be leaving the island because of increased housing costs and because of cost of the living. And in terms of this new sustainable economic strategy that we have seen published in the course of the year, there's still a lot more to be done, not least that we've had this barriers to business piece of work, and it's actually saying these things. There's too much in the way of regulation that is causing a problem for businesses. And indeed, in terms of ideas about really boosting the economy, well, a key feature seems to be selling rights over the seabed, and I don't really feel that that's like so much as increasing economic productivity as selling a major asset. The value for money, it's incredibly disappointing not to see some really kind of constructive work not really to have taken place in this year. The only one we saw was this deep dive review into Jersey Sport, which, I wouldn't have thought was the biggest priority in terms of all the arm's length organisations, all the state-owned entities where we might question, well, are they really being held to account? And as I mentioned in another speech, there are certain recommendations of the Controller and Auditor General that have not been implemented, particularly in the case of things like arm's length organisations, which the Controller herself said would drive value for money, and instead we see, we're going to cut here and there, and no real kind of proper plan that reflects those recommendations. I really would urge the Council of Ministers get on with it. We don't have much time in this States Assembly. Indeed, another issue that doesn't seem to have been addressed yet is the growth of the public sector. Again, that causes problems for the private sector insofar as it needs staff too. And when you do have like jobs being offered, 74,000 for what seems to be relatively not greatly productive roles, then again that causes a lot of disgruntlement within the community that basically generates the taxes that fund all this public spending. I would like to, so in that respect, perhaps it really is time in the forthcoming year to hear a bit more about government, about what is it doing to really improve the pay structures so that we can have less in the way of obstacles in terms of having people within government who can really, really show that they can deliver. Even in fact, asking, these delivery arms that we have to have, why are they there? You need to have people actually able to properly oversee them, but also to be able to give some joined up policies so that they are not just almost like acting in accordance with policies of 10 years ago. This needs to be done if the Council of Ministers truly want joined up thinking. So, Sir, I can see a reason for supporting this government plan in terms of the improved, another thing I will also mention is in terms of the alcohol duty, I didn't even see that curbing excessive drinking was even mentioned in the health policy. So again, but hey, that seems to be a new point now. So in terms of the government plan, I can see reasons to support it in terms of the increased help for farmers and the fishing communities. I agree with Deputy Mazik. I would like to see Part B separately debated in terms of these liquid waste charges. It does cause a lot of concern about more ways of taxing people. I'll leave it there, sir, but thank you.
Deputy Farnham.
Thank you, sir. It's been a busy week, and I'm sure we all hope, being optimists, we could perhaps stand a chance of finishing this today, sir. And it's been a bit of a blur. I got home yesterday evening, so just in time to catch the news headlines from the other room, and I heard them say, Lyndon takes a top job after vote of no confidence. And I must have been dozing or something yesterday, sir, but I did have to pinch myself. And also, sir, it's been noted that some members have been commenting on my voting pattern, sir, and I have to say it is a little concerning, but also I find rather a compliment that Reform Jersey seem to be following my voting, sir, quite a lot these days. I thank them for that. But on a more serious note, sir, I want to talk very briefly, and I have to mention the hospital, sir, in slightly more detail than Deputy Mezek did, and I know he chairs the hospital panel, because this is, and I make no apology, sir, for bringing it up again, because this is, in my opinion, the most important issue we are dealing with, and this Assembly will probably deal with for decades to come. And I think the first area of concern, sir, is the fact that, and this is not, I'm not criticising the ministers, but the first area of concern is the relationship between the Minister for Infrastructure and the Health Minister doesn't seem to be working properly, which is a great shame. We have the Minister responsible for the most important and potentially costly project we're ever going to do so in the foreseeable future, not really working collaboratively with the Minister for Health who runs the service. And I really would like to see that change if possible. The allegations, sir, of money being wasted by previous governments, well, I maintain, sir, the money spent by the previous government hasn't all been wasted, but some of it has, or might have been, simply because this government essentially has pretty much cancelled the project, whereas the previous government, every step of the way, came to this Assembly quite properly and sought the Assembly's permission to proceed. And I think to make an informed decision moving forward, we do need to have an evaluation and a comparison of costs, and not just capital costs, because unfortunately, I believe the capital cost difference, and I think it will be significant. I believe the price band of the new health facilities, if the government are going to be honest about it, and I know the Minister for Infrastructure is an honest and direct politician, and I think he will be in due course, is going to cost in the region of £1.5 billion if they do everything they want to do. And but the capital cost, I think, will pale into insignificance compared to the financing cost. Now, we missed the boat on being able to borrow at a lower interest rate. There's nothing really we can do about that, but members must be aware that whatever we build, wherever we build it, is going to cost significantly more in the short to medium term, at least, because of the high interest rates. But as the Treasury Minister will say, that hopefully, sir, over the period of a 30 or 40-year loan, perhaps later on down the road, we might get some of that back as interest rates change. But of course, it's not all about cost. So, and I want to make it absolutely clear, it's more about the clinical and medical outcomes. It's about delivering the most efficient health service for the money, sir. And I think to make an informed decision on further spending, the government, and I urge the government to come back with a proper comparison of what we had, albeit adjusted if changes need to be made internally, so at that time we can make a proper decision. The government plan itself doesn't really contain anything new. I don't think it's evolved too much, only insofar as we've seen expenditure forecast to increase by the best part of 30% over the 4-year span of the budget. And I still maintain that we are not prioritising our spending properly. We're not focusing on what I believe should be the key areas of maintaining a solid and strong society. So health. I don't believe our health budget is enough given the advances in medicine and the life expectancy increases and the new types of treatments available. Education, sir, I think we've seen by the challenges we're having now that perhaps we're not focusing on that as much as we should do. Law and order, sir, as I said before, the Home Affairs Minister is in a difficult position, has had to table a budget that could force cuts in frontline policing, sir. The infrastructure, we need a lot of work on our infrastructure and public realm. And it's hard to believe that an island of this size and prosperity still has islanders using borehole and not having mains drains and all of the issues that come with that, sir. We have potential new taxes on the horizon with waste charges. We have a Cabinet Office, and I know we might be making a little bit of political mileage out of this, but when you look at how the Chief Minister's department has evolved into a Cabinet Office, I'm not sure many islanders understand or fully support it, but if there is an 80 million cost, there's a huge cost, ongoing cost in IT, sir, and yet we still can't, I still can't get a printout from the printer downstairs, and the Deputy Renniff of St Brelard, sir, is having to wait for a delay to get a signal through on the PC here to speak. I sort of make light of it, but it's that sort of expenditure and other sorts of expenditure that seem to be given precedence over the essential aspects of running the community that we used to have in Jersey. Growing up in Jersey, I remember my parents and my grandparents boasting about what a fantastic health service we had, what brilliant education we had, how good our roads were, and so forth. And we haven't kept up. I'm not saying what we've got now isn't good, because it is good. We can still be proud of this small island, but we could do better, and we must always aim to do better. And so, rather than, as much as being critical, I'm urging the government to sort of have a rethink over the year ahead and look at how funds are prioritised. We appear, sir, to have a divided council of ministers with different factions emerging, and I do hope this can be resolved. And I genuinely wish the Chief Minister well with sorting this out. It's a difficult job, and we're not an easy bunch of people to deal with at the best of times, but we are, I believe, all well-intentioned. We are all here for the right reasons, and we all want to do the best for our island. And I urge ministers to sort out their differences and work in the interests of all islanders. We don't want to see a vote of no confidence here. There are rumours abound, sir. We don't want to see this assembly having to debate that. We don't want to be in a position where we have to back them or sack them. But that could happen, sir, if the Council of Ministers does not work as more as a team, sir, under the leadership of the Chief Minister, and I genuinely wish them well with sorting that out, because it is in the interests of all islanders, sir. There have been some wins in this, sir, but the additional cost for the health facilities is still concerning. The potential new taxes for waste charges, sir. The unwanted and unnecessary increase in duty, sir, which might not be the reason for some hospitality businesses going, but for many it will be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and I think we've made a mistake on that. Regrettably, sir, I don't think I will be supporting this government plan, sir, and I do hope that the government will take on board some of the comments made, not just by myself, sir, but by all of the members, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. So the first thing I'd like to do, even though I'm speaking from an opposition point of view, as the de facto member of the de facto opposition party, government in waiting, I think it is important to acknowledge the hard work of our officers and the government's officers that have gone into preparing this. Not just the hard work that they've prepared, but the fact that they've had to sit by the radio and listen to 4 days of what has been very exciting debate, I'm sure they will agree, which they helped prepare some of those for, and they helped prepare comments against some of the propositions as well. That's all part of the democratic process. So that's been said now. I'm sure the Chief Minister will echo those words when she sums up in her own way. I want to focus on something very specific that wasn't raised during the main debates. So we had a lot of focus on alcohol duty. We had extended debates on it. We also didn't have quite the debate we might have expected.
Pause, Deputy. I'm not sure we're core 8. We might. We're not core 8 in the chamber. Could you check whether we have members online? 3 online. We are just about core 8. Please continue.
Thanks, sir. With that little break, I'm reminded of a digression which I think is loosely related to the government plan, because we know that there's been an underinvestment in our frontline services. What we've recognised sitting in this chamber is that you can still hear the sirens very loudly going on outside. So there is clearly some activity going on from the Blue Light Brigade. And I think if there's any cuts to be made, it could be made in the cuts to the decibel levels of those sirens. Something I've been meaning to ask the Minister about outside of the chamber, but I thought I'd put it on record, sir. Getting back to the very specific point I wanted to make, so we've had lots of talk about the right level of duty on alcohol and how that might affect both on the one hand drinking levels and the hospitality industry on the other. We probably haven't had the level of debate we might have expected a few weeks ago about fuel duty and how that sits into the wider issue of climate change. That seems to have gone under the radar, and that will continue to be, I think, an important issue in future, because we seem to have agreed to park it because of the cost of living crisis. But there will be a trade-off at some point in the future when we want to try and get emissions down and change behaviour on that. So very much the green taxes, and we've got away with it in this debate, but we're not going to get away with it in the future, something to highlight for future government plans. The other point is that I think last year I was slightly frustrated that something I wanted to talk on, which is tobacco, and there was not any debate on it. And it's not something I necessarily feel strongly enough to have brought an amendment about, but it is contained within Part A, of course, which is in the general heads of expenditure. And I would like to give members some food for thought, but in particular, the Health Minister some food for thought, as well as the Treasury Minister, and ask what the end game is for this scenario. I just had a very brief chat with the Treasury Minister when I pointed out the line to him about how much AMPO duty is collected on tobacco alone in the island. And of course, the reason I've singled out tobacco is that's one tax which euphemistically the budget talks about having a 5% escalator on it in terms of the duty. What that means is that there's 5% extra on top of RPI. So we know RPI is already 10.1%, and 5% has been added to that. So tobacco duty on average is going up by 15.9%. There are slightly different rates depending on the type of tobacco, but if we're talking about rolling tobacco and packets of tobacco here, your smoker in Jersey, and there are still a few of them left by all accounts, contributing to the coffers, will see their tobacco going out by 15.9%. Now, why do I mention that? I think I'm not a smoker, incidentally, and I don't like smoking, but I think we have to recognise that in a democracy, all kinds of things are permitted. It's legal, and it's also taxed, if it's not encouraged, that is. So the reality of this budget is that it's 590 £5,000 extra compared to last year will be generated by tobacco going into the Treasury coffers. And the overall amount of duty from tobacco going into the budget is £16 million. Now, that doesn't sound like, does it sound like a lot? I thought, are those figures right? Are we really getting £16 million a year in a small island from tobacco sales? And to put that into context, it's more than the 1% for arts and culture. So it's more than 1% of all the revenue that the Minister is spending on the overall expenditure for Jersey comes from tobacco sales. It's quite remarkable. I'm glad that we're not linking the 1% for arts and culture to tobacco sales, incidentally, because we might find that dwindling, or would we? Because the way that tobacco duty has been predicated year on year is that the amount must stay the same, even though the health imperative is that the number of smokers every year must decline, partly because they're dying off, and they're not coming back. The new smokers are not being replenished in the same terms as the ones who are leaving us, which is good. That's the trend we want. But it means that to retain the same amount of duty every year on tobacco, we have to have put tobacco up by above inflation. I think that makes sense. The problem is, the question then arises at some point, where does this all end? Because, of course, your average smoker in Jersey, I don't know what an average smoker is, but somebody who's not fully converted to vaping yet or quit altogether, somebody who's a relatively light smoker, might smoke 20 a day, so 1 packet a day, which is obviously 365 packets a year, and they're paying £1.38 extra this year on duty. That's over and above the duty they already contribute. So that smoker will find themselves £503 worse off a year. It's a bit of a shame, because if they gave up smoking, they could buy outright a bus pass if they wanted to, although they could maybe buy a bike as well. But putting that aside, the next question I ask is, how progressive is that tax? Because we hear a lot about progressive, regressive, and neutral taxation. And I'd like to know what the demographics are of smokers in Jersey. I don't know if we have those figures yet, but I'd like the Treasury Minister and the Health Minister to get their heads together at some point in the future, because it could well be, and I have no evidence for this, I'm sure smoking is an addiction that can afflict all classes and all economic backgrounds, but there's a strong suspicion that it may impact certain demographics more than others. So I'm very uncomfortable about an above RPI increase on tobacco. And if there had been an amendment, I would have supported an amendment not to increase that on that simple basis. I'll continue with the logic, sir, and I'll finish shortly. But bearing in mind I didn't speak on it last year, take half of my time as an addition on what I might have said last year. So the logical position is that in order to get that £16 million year on year, which is also being put into the future budgets, it's roughly 16 million, give or take a few £1,000s. What happens when there's only one single smoker left in Jersey? So when everybody else has either died out or been converted to vaping or quit smoking, and you have one single smoker who's smoking, then by my calculations, the level of duty on a packet of tobacco is going to need to be £2,192 a year for that smoker to pay in order that's a little bit much, I think, isn't it? This is by today's prices. So if all the smokers gave up over the next 364 days before the next budget, and only one of them was left standing, he or she would be facing, let's round it up to £2,195 for a packet of tobacco, which I think is a bit steep, personally, when you could probably just buy a ticket for Condor and buy a 20-pack of duty-free on the boat or on the plane, and you'd get effectively a free holiday out of it too. So I'd like to leave those thoughts with the Minister for Health and for Treasury. I think when it comes to the other points, I think my party leader's already said it. I think there are elements of this which are progressive. There are elements which are not progressive. We've had some amendments here which I think could and should have been adopted, which maybe could and will be adopted in future years. So the proverbial curate's egg, I think, is the one that comes to mind, sir. But thanks members for indulging me on the specific issue of tobacco. It's not sufficient for me to vote against Part A in its own right, but I think the points needed to be put on record.
Deputy Tom Binney.
Thank you, sir. I know members are tired, and I certainly won't delay people. I just got 3 points to make, really by way of correction, and perhaps unsurprisingly, that's in relation to the words of Deputy Farnham. I think we've got to be very careful when we're using words to the Assembly, particularly when the media are listening. And I took note of the words that were mentioned, and as follows: the Minister for Infrastructure is not working collaboratively with the Health Minister. Now, I'm not sure whether that's what Deputy Farnham particularly meant, or if he meant to refer to a sometimes tense relationship, but the words are as he said, and I would invite Deputy Farnham to look at all of the evidence, and I think that's simply not true. I believe I've worked completely collaboratively and in good faith over the last 18 months. So that's the first correction. I think rather dangerously, Deputy Farnham has chosen to suggest that the new hospital facilities are going to cost 1.5 billion. He didn't offer any evidence for that, but I would invite him to get a calculator out and look at the area involved in the acute facility, which, as he knows, is on or around the 700 million. If you then add the ambulatory and health village together, I think you'll find that it's a slightly smaller square area. But you also have to bear in mind that the cost per square area for those two units will be cheaper than acute unit. And from his time in office, Deputy Farnham will know that. And to suggest, therefore, with those facts in mind, that he can suggest to the public 1.5 million, I don't think is a particularly responsible thing to do. I think that's that perhaps was not the wisest move. And just a minor point that to suggest that, and it wasn't made directly, but there was an inference that we had money at 2% available to us, and as the deputy well knows, when we came to office, the financial climate had changed dramatically, and that was not available to us. And I don't know why the money wasn't borrowed by Deputy Farnham, but that's a matter for him. So that's all I have to say, sir. Thank you.
Conor Tarbison-Martin.
Thank you, sir. So we cannot underestimate the importance of any government plan. As I've said in previous speeches and previous debates on previous government plans, this is more than just a spending document. It is a document with considerable social impact, and it is, above all else, the key statement to islanders about what the Government of Jersey is and what its ambitions are. I certainly do not envy the difficult choices that must have been made each year as to what to prioritise, what to fund, and where to reduce. It is good that the Government of Jersey is seeking to be efficient in its use of public funds and looks to help confront the key challenges this island faces in the housing crisis and the health service. And yet, these challenges are more than just numbers on a page. It is about the lives they affect and the need to understand that these are not just questions about services, but these are questions about our island and everyone on it. These questions are going to be central to the remaining years this Assembly has before the next general election. I'm grateful to the Council and Ministers accepting my amendment as amended to publish an annual report on the progress made on implementing the recommendations of the report of the Task Force on Violence Against Women and Girls. I hope the rest of the Assembly will join me in thanking the Task Force for their incredibly hard work in producing this report and for not shying away from showing us just how far we need to go in tackling violence against women and girls in Jersey. We have certainly made progress over the years, but we must never forget that we both can and must go further in building a safer, more equal and kinder island. I hope that the Minister for Home Affairs will ensure that the reports my amendments will bring are comprehensive and provide the detail needed to successfully scrutinise the progress made in implementing the Task Force's recommendations and how they are improving lives in Jersey. If it looks like the government is falling behind, then I will be raising this with the Assembly, either through standalone propositions or amendments to future government plans, and I hope that my fellow members will be doing the same. The report of the task force cannot just be a report supported by further reports, buried within a forest of reports, as Deputy Ward mentioned earlier. We need to show that this Assembly have made real changes to improve the lives of islanders, something that every elected representative must do. The words on the pages the government published must become actions, because I must confess that I've spent time feeling as if this government is by press release. I mean no disrespect to the Chief Minister or her Council of Ministers, but this is a mistake the previous government of Jersey made to its severe detriment, and it needs to be fixed, because we cannot build a hospital out of paper. We've all seen the concerns raised about the time spent by the Assembly reflecting on its processes and procedures and composition. But in some cases, this is all we have left to debate, if policy and actions are not brought to this Assembly to debate, amend and deliver. This Assembly is left to the backbenchers. The Council of Ministers must remember the value of this Assembly and the invaluable support it provides to policy making. If we want to truly build trust in government and interest in our Assembly, then the Government of Jersey needs to be seen to be bringing propositions to this Assembly to debate for the better of the island. A focus on statements over the opportunities to properly deliberate within the chamber makes us, to quote Tears for Fears, one of my favourite bands, fools to the rules of the government plan. We have 49 members in this Assembly. The government needs to remember just how much value each and every one of us can bring to helping improve this island. Sir, this ties into my final point, which is the need for us not to lose sight that every one of us in this Assembly wants to build a better island. Jersey is a wonderful place to live, and we need not only work to preserve and improve what is truly extraordinary island, but also to enhance the public realm and the benefits it provides. Islanders are much more than just customers, and we must never see them as that, and this should never be forgotten. We need ambition in what we do. We cannot simply maintain the standard of living, we need to improve it. And this means that the very poorest in Jersey should be supported, and they must have the same opportunities to succeed in this island as the very richest. This should never be forgotten. In finishing, I must once again remind this Assembly that we cannot risk undervaluing itself or letting itself become a malign body that can be cut down and diminished. Our democratic culture must be boosted. We know this, but it can never be replaced by managerialism. We should never forget how lucky we are, not only to have our own parliament, that we can discuss these issues and create homegrown solutions in a way that is democratic, that allows anyone in our island to run for election and potentially be elected and serve the communities that form this single island community. We need to build on this, and we need the government to use the Christmas break to reflect on what it has lost sight of, what it needs to refocus on, and just how much potential good the government and the backbenchers, us as an Assembly, can do. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on the government plan? Deputy Luce.
Thank you, sir. Members will note that the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel didn't bring any amendments to this government plan, but we did issue a comments paper and did a short review. And before I talk about big ticket items, because we really have mentioned some, I just want to say first that one of our recommendations was for the Housing Minister and to make sure that he make sure there's enough funds in the Housing Advice Service in the future. Certainly one of the things that's occurred to come over to the panel very clearly in reviewing this issue is that very many people look for advice on housing issues, and many of them go to independent people when they really could be going to our own Housing Advice Service. So we've asked the Minister to prioritise that. But I want to come back to these big ticket items, and we really do have some here that we feel government should be addressing. The first one asks that the Minister for the Environment should work with Treasury Minister to continue to ensure the priorities given to delivering a long-term financial strategy for the Climate Emergency Fund in time for next year's government plan. We go on to say that we'd like a more detailed breakdown of the proposed expenditure in that plan on the initiatives to be funded, and we want a statement provided how that specific expenditure is going to achieve value for money. I don't need to remind members how important our climate emergency is and how important it is that we fund the initiatives we're going to take to do our bit to try to reduce carbon emissions. We also speak, sir, in our paper about how the Minister for the Environment should work with the Treasury Minister, again, to prioritise a longer-term funding solution for the water strategy. And this wasn't included, to our surprise, in this year's government plan. But members need to be under no illusion that in the long-term future, not that long-term, by 2030, 2035, we need to come up with a solution to our island's water. And I'm going to say problem because we know that potentially in the future we're going to be short of water. And whether we decide on a new reservoir, whether we decide on recycling, or whether we decide on increasing the amount of desalinisation we do, that decision needs to be taken in good time. Because if we do end up going down the road of a new reservoir, we know that the lead-in period is probably the best part of 20 years. And decisions about where we go with water, long-term decisions, need to be taken soon to make sure that by the time we get to the crunch point, we've already invested and taken measures to make sure we do have enough water on this island. Another one of our recommendations is about the Minister for Infrastructure prioritising long-term funding solutions for ongoing maintenance and investment in the public estate. And it won't surprise members that we've highlighted this to the Minister. And I think it's become clear to him in his short time in office that very many of our buildings and structures are not maintained properly, and that's a short-term saving and a long-term expense, because as I think we all know, if you can't do the job properly, things start to go away for you and get very much more expensive. Another recommendation for infrastructure is again that that Minister should work with the Minister for Treasury and Resources to prioritise a long-term funding model for waste charging. And I know we've discussed that in this government plan debate, but it's one that needs to be spoken about and one that needs to be decided on. There's a huge amount of expense for the infrastructure department moving forward in all sorts of waste streams. They all need to be funded, and the government needs to take a really serious look about how those final proposals are going to be brought forward to the Assembly, and we'd like to see that brought forward in time for next year's debate. Finally, so I just mentioned potentially the biggest ticket item, if you like, when it comes to money, and again it's for the Infrastructure Minister to talk to the Treasury Minister to explore the longer-term funding solution or solutions for the numerous coastal adaptation projects identified in the Shoreline Management Plan. And we note that several defence projects have been identified in the first edition of this plan, and they're going to need constructing by 2040. And that may seem a long time to wait, but a long-term funding solution has got to be brought forward, and one that enables work to start on these projects in sufficient time for them to be completed by that date. These are not small projects which are just a couple of months' work. This is going to be significant pieces of infrastructure which is going to affect many parts of the South Coast. They need to be identified, they need to be decided on, and most importantly, the Treasury Minister and the Infrastructure Minister are going to have to come up with ways of funding those. So a recurring theme throughout our review has been the need for longer-term financing for a number of key priority work streams and projects, namely, as I've said, climate emergency, liquid waste charging, shoreline management plan, and the maintenance and investment in the public estate. And I mustn't forget the water strategy, as I've mentioned. It's understandable that there will always be numerous competing funding priorities across government. However, a key underlying concern for my panel is the lack of progress to date in moving forward with longer-term financing strategies for any of these items. The panel intends to keep a watching brief throughout next year and would hope to see further progress made and some longer-term plans presented to this Assembly in time for the debate this time next year. The panel further notes that the FPP in their annual report has also reiterated the need for long-term financing plans for the Climate Emergency Fund, and they recommend that consideration be given by government to the funding strategy of major capital projects over the medium and long term. So I think the message is clear from my panel. We'll be keeping a very close eye on this, but government and governments into the future have to take the bull by the horns and start somewhere. It's always so easy to push these very major and long-term projects down the road and accept that the next government is going to have to start the work. But it's time that on all these projects, we took the initiative and started to, at the very least, talk about how we're going to fund them. And we very much hope to see some of that funding projections brought into next year's plan. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy. Deputy Felton.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to start by addressing my amendment, which was accepted by government, and I'm grateful for that. I'm pleased that this will mean that financial support will be made available to families with children with life-limiting or life-threatening illnesses or more complex healthcare needs. This was a clear gap in provision of financial support for these families who were regularly getting turned away when they went to CLS and applied for support. I think it's quite sad, actually, that a backbencher had to point out this quite obvious gap in provision. And I echo the Constable of St Martin when she said how important it is that actually government also start bringing more propositions to this Assembly during this term of office. Before I leave that, I'd like to thank in particular the charities that helped me put that amendment together. So that was Click Sargent, Family First and Family Nursing and Home Care, as well as the families that actually were brave enough to share their stories with me. Moving on, the hospital, I know previous speakers have mentioned this. I am highly concerned that due to the government's unwillingness to share all of the details that they have available to them about the proposed expenditure on the full programme of the healthcare facilities, we're at real risk as an Assembly of having an incomplete programme. That in the future, what we may find is that the whole programme the Assembly may feel is unaffordable, and I would urge the government to share as much information as they have with the Assembly. I was quite disappointed when I read actually the response to the Future Hospital panel's comments earlier, in that the government doesn't trust the other members of the Assembly enough to even share the information with us confidentially. And I think that that adds to the risk of the programme, and it adds potentially to the risk when the government comes back later in the year to request some more funding, that potentially the rest of the Assembly may feel uncomfortable with the amount of money needing to be spent. And the hospital, it has to be one of our priorities. We can't end up in the situation that previous Assemblies have found themselves in. We can't end up in a situation where we have yet again failed to provide the hospital facilities that our community so deserves. Another key area, and it is an area of relentless focus for the government, is housing. And I was interested to hear Deputy Luce's comments, actually, because I also looked at the growth bid for housing. And I'd like some comfort from the Chief Minister around the level of support and resource that there actually is available within this government plan for housing policy and housing strategy. because looking at the figures within the plan and looking at the growth bids, it looks like there may well be more funding available for the economic development strategies that were discussed yesterday than there is actually for housing policy development and strategy. So whilst I commend the economic development team for gaining the money and securing the resources for those important strategies, I do think that we also need to prioritise housing policy so that the government is able to bring forward action that we so sorely need in this island around affordable housing. Another question that I have is around how the value for money targets will come about. The Treasury Minister seems very, very confident that departments will be able to make these targets, although I have as yet to see a definition or an agreed definition around the value for money programme. So again, I would like the Chief Minister in her summing up to address exactly what methods will be used to shore up these particular savings, because that isn't clear. And further to some comments yesterday, I think it was when we were discussing the amendment of the Economic and International Development Panel, it's not always clear what the business planning and budgeting process is to other states' members. In fact, we get very little information around what comes under the heads of expenditure within a government plan. So when we're looking to make amendments or looking to get some assurance that the services that we hold dear and the services that we want to make sure are well provided for, we don't actually get that clarity within the current heads of expenditure. Sorry, I'm having trouble reading my writing now. I should have taken lessons from Deputy Ward. The other thing that has been a bit of a common theme this week is comments from ministers when they talk about wealthy people leaving the island if they are asked to pay just a little bit more tax. I'd like to think that the leaders of our island had a bit more faith in our island than that. I think our island's a good place to live, and actually the reasons why we may wish to address that tax equality issue is so that we can continue to provide the services that we need for our whole community. So it really does sadden me when we've heard this week in several debates our island leaders saying that they feel that they have so little faith in our island as a place to live that people will choose to leave if they have to pay a little bit more tax. And let's face it, these are wealthy people. So I just wanted to put that on record. The other thing that I did want to put on record as part of this debate was my concern around ministers' preparation around amendments to this government plan. We saw earlier today that the Social Security Minister had completely misunderstood what an amendment meant. That minister was an Assistant Minister for Treasury. So does that mean that the Treasury team hadn't got together around a table and discussed an amendment to the government plan that had an impact on their department? Did it mean that the Council of Ministers hadn't got round a table and understood an amendment and discussed as to whether they were going to support that amendment or not? I found that very disappointing. So whilst I'm happy that my amendment was accepted, I am in the same position as Deputy Mezek in that if the proposition is taken not in parts and as a whole, I will be in a position where I will be voting against it. Thank you.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Very briefly, I did want to respond to Deputy Luce and thank him for his comments regarding long-term planning, and particularly as it relates to my portfolio, the climate emergency, long-term funding, for example. As people have pointed out, we did indeed lose the fuel duty rise this year to respond to the cost of living crisis. These things are balances. It was the right decision in the circumstances, but the need to incentivize a move away from carbon-based fuels remains, not just to reduce emissions, but also to improve air quality, and by improving active travel infrastructure to also improve public health. So as has been remarked, I think it's a subject to which we will return. As far as the water strategy is concerned, I do regret that we were not able to gain funding this year for it, but it doesn't mean that nothing is going to happen. There are lots of no regrets actions that we can take as part of work that we already do to start advancing work in that area, and indeed with Jersey Water, who have work to do to work out what options they have, to put more detail on those options, and that can progress anyway. And for the record, my very strong preference in terms of the potential for new water resource in the island is to start treating our wastewater and put it back into our reservoirs, which, I think that wastewater effectively constitutes a new reservoir, but of a different form. And there's one further point. Accusations have been made of a shortage of new ideas. Well, as we used to say in television, there are no truly new ideas, but there are new versions of ideas. There are ideas that actually get turned into action, and there are ideas that map out a better future for the island. And in this context, I would draw attention to the wind farm as a proposal that isn't referenced particularly in the government plan debates that we've had, but absolutely represents ambition for the future, responding through the Future Economy Programme to a need for us to show new economic growth in the island, to find new sources of economic growth in the island, to find imaginative new ways of developing the island's economy, which will give hope, I believe, for the future and for young people in the island. So I do think that we should look at this government's programme in the round and see that there are good ideas out there, even if they have to be rather grudgingly admitted perhaps sometimes. Thank you very much, sir.
Very much, Dave. Does any other member wish to speak on the government plan? No other member wishes to speak? I close the debate and call upon the Chief Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir. Sir, this is the second government plan of this Assembly, and I say of this Assembly because although it is brought by the government and the executive, it is an effort of every member of this Assembly to consider it, to scrutinise it, to read, to learn, understand, challenge, bring amendments, discuss, compromise, and come to this end point where after 4 long days in the chamber, we have finalised all of those formal discussions, and we're able to vote on this government plan. I thank all members of the Assembly, all officials, both in the executive, in scrutiny and in the GREF, who have worked on bringing us to this point. We are all, as we are in our own community at large, we are all parts of the machine, and without those parts, the machine doesn't work, and we're all extremely grateful to everyone for their efforts. The Constable of St Martin referred to the fact that this may be a document, but it's not just about numbers on a page. The Constable is quite right. These pages turn into actions. And what we have learned as in our first 18 months in office is that delivery is difficult. The greatest way to achieve the most is actually by focusing and by considering very carefully where the greatest impact can be delivered and how that can be achieved, because we all have a huge list of things that we would like to do, but long lists very rarely are delivered in their entirety. And so our ambition is great, but the need in this particular government plan has been to focus, to provide some stability, to start to correct the wrongs of the legacy that we have encountered, to stabilise our budgets and put us on a strong footing so that we can now move forward with our ambitious plans for the island. As Deputy Renouf just mentioned, with our wind farm opportunity, with our Future Economy programme, which is the government's answer to preparing for the demographic challenges that we see ahead of us by focusing on our desire for economic growth, which we see, along with greater productivity, which we see as the way forward for our island to maintain its successful position, to be able to improve living standards, which we've all acknowledged in debates this week have fallen behind since 2008. It is time now to start rebuilding, but to do that, we do have to focus. We have to grow our economy. We have to be more productive. We have to deliver a more efficient public service that we can focus on the critical aspects of that, the health, the education, and the safety aspects. We have all seen in the past year how incredibly our public services respond to crisis. I don't often like to say that I am proud, but I am proud of every single person who has stepped up and responded to the various challenges that we have experienced. It is often said, and it's a wonderful thing, that in Jersey, not a lot happens. But this year, we have found that a lot has happened. So I think that we have demonstrated in our responses how very well trained the people who work in our public services are, how able they are to respond to the challenges that we have faced, and how our community has come together to support each other, to protect each other. And with that strength, we are now able to look forward. So one of the values of our public service is that we are always improving. We have heard the comments, the criticisms, and the feedback of members throughout this week. We take those on board, we listen, and we commit to living our value, continuing to improve as we move forward. But we are grateful to members for their contributions to this government plan. As I say, this is an opportunity to stabilise. Some may call it boring, but we call it investing for now, but also for our future. Because if we invest now in correcting our ship, responding to the economic challenges that we find, improving increasing the amount of money in people's pockets so that they can meet the cost of living challenges. And that is what we have done in this government plan. Deputy Mezek suggested that we had done nothing for people who do not pay tax, because of course those taxpayers who benefit from personal allowances have seen a considerable increase in the changes that we have made through this government plan. Please, Deputy, do not also forget that the Social Security Minister has brought forward increases to the social security benefits. So we have, for all islanders, helped to put more money in their pockets to help them through these difficult times. And that, of course, is what we all wish to do. But we also have to deliver. And so we have a considerable number of items to deliver as a result of this government plan. We can progress with our hospital project, which we are absolutely determined to deliver, one that will be appropriate and affordable for the island. It will have more beds than the previous project. It will improve outcomes for islanders, no doubt, but it will be the right solution for our times and our needs, and we look forward to delivering upon it. We also have opportunities to improve the public realm, to improve the environment of St Helier, which was a commitment in our manifesto, and it has been well documented in the last 18 months that we will develop the Coronation Greenway through St Helier, improving the sustainable travel opportunities for those who reside and work and visit St Helier. It is part of a programme including we anticipate improvements to Fort Regent finally, something that has for many years been a point of frustration for islanders. We, working with Ports of Jersey, hope to see change at La Folie in the coming months, and I look forward to that greatly. We have much to deliver, and delivery is the focus of this government. And through our economic strategy, through our financial recovery plan, getting our health spending back under control, finding a way forward to invest where it's needed, but containing our costs when they are when it's needed. We will continue in this vein, and with the Assembly's permission, I hope we will progress into the next year where we can build upon the items that we have delivered, and we will look forward to delivering yet more and strengthening our island resources, our island infrastructure, and the well-being of islanders for now and into the future. So I move the proposition and ask for the appel.
As called for, invite members.
So it was raised in my speech the prospect of whether any of this could be taken in separate parts.
It's a matter for you, Chief Minister, entirely.
So I would like to propose the proposition in its entirety.
Very well. Very well. The appel is called for. I invite members to return to their seats. The vote is on the proposed government plan as amended, and I ask the greffier to open the voting. Members have had the opportunity of casting their vote. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The government plan has been adopted. 33 votes pour, 13 votes contre, no abstentions.
If you have the 13, sir.
13.
Those members voting contre, Deputies Southern, Tadier, Lehegara, Bob Ward, Alves, Farnham, Mezek, Coles, Porre, Catherine Curtis, Beltham, Kovac and Andrews.
Very well. The next item of public business is the Draft Finance 2024 Budget Jersey Law P91 lodged by the Treasury Minister. For the purposes of the debate, the main responder is the Chair of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel, and I ask the greffier to read the citation.
Draft Finance 2024 Budget Jersey Law 2000, a law to set the standard rate of income tax for 2024 and to implement parts of the Government Plan 2024 to 2027 by amending the Income Tax Jersey Law 1961, the Customs and Excise Jersey Law 1999, the Goods and Services Tax Jersey Law 2007, the Stamp Duties and Fees Jersey Law 1998, the Taxation Land Transactions Jersey Law 2009, the Taxation Enveloped Property Transactions Jersey Law 2022, and to make consequential amendments. The States, subject to the sanction of His Most Excellent Majesty and Council, have adopted the following law.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. This gives effect to the decisions that need any change in the finance law to the decisions that we have just made in the government plan, and I propose the principles of those changes in the finance law.
Are the principles seconded? Any member wish to speak on the principles? Those in favour of adopting the principles kindly show. Those against? The principles are adopted. There are a number of amendments, Minister, brought about as a result of the amendments made. Are you proposing the articles as amended in second reading?
There's one article which I'm not proposing, so I propose Article 1 to 44 as amended as an amendment to Article 25, giving effect to Deputy Cole's amendment. There's an amendment to Article 37, and then the alcohol, which deals with the fuel duty, and then the alcohol duty amendments are amendments to Articles 31, 32, 33, 34 and 35. And I propose 1 to 44 as amended.
You propose Articles 1 to 44 as amended. Are those seconded? Does any member wish to speak on Articles 1 to 44? Those in favour of adopting Articles 1 to 44 kindly show. Those against? They are adopted. Yes, Minister.
And now I propose Articles 46 to 59.
You're not proposing Article 45?
That's correct, sir. The government made an amendment to the government plan about net zero duties on planes, and that needs to be dealt with in the round.
And so that's, I beg your pardon, 46 to 59, is it?
That's correct, sir, yes.
Are Articles 46 to 59 seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak? Could somebody switch off the light that's in the Conotaba St Lawrence's? Sorry, does any member wish to speak on Articles 46 to 59? Those in favour of adopting those articles kindly show. Those against? Do you propose in third reading, Minister?
I do, sir, and as I do so, I'd like to echo the words of Deputy Tadia and the Chief Minister in thanking all of my officials and the officials across government who have put in a tremendous amount of work to deliver the government plan, and I'm extremely grateful for their support, and without their support we would not be able to have these debates in such an informed and orderly fashion. So I'm very grateful for them. And I propose the changes to the finance law in third reading.
Are they seconded for third reading? Does any member wish to speak in third reading? You call for the appel?
If I may, sir, thank you.
The appel is called for. I invite members to return to their seat. The vote is the Draft Finance 2024 Budget Jersey Law as amended in third reading. I ask the greffier to open the voting. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The government plan, I beg your pardon, the law has been adopted in third reading. 45 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstentions. Well, do you move the acte operatoire?
Indeed, sir, I'm not sure if they needs to be read or...
Yes, I beg your pardon, I'd ask the greffier to read the citation. Getting ahead of ourselves a little, right?
Draft Act declaring that the Finance 2024 Budget Jersey Law 2000 has immediate effect. The States make this Act under Article 12 of the Public Finances Jersey Law 2019.
Minister.
So as members will know, this has the effect of bringing these items into effect in a timely manner rather than having to go through the normal Privy Council procedure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is the Act seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the Act? All those in favour of adopting the Act kindly show. Those against? The Act is adopted. I had to check with the greffier we'd finished everything else because I couldn't quite believe it. I think we now move on to the arrangements for future business. Chair of PC.
Thank you, sir. I've been advised that Deputy Scott's proposition P75 has been deferred to the February meeting, and 2 propositions have been lodged today by Deputies Ferry and Andrews, and both the propositions will be listed for debate on the 16th of January. These propositions, along with P90, P92, P95, P97, P98, P99, P100 and P101 are all listed. So therefore, at the moment, 10 propositions are listed for debate on Tuesday, the 16th of January. And I would ask members to keep subsequent days free to be able to meet if necessary. So this is the last arrangement of business for 2023, and I wish all members and all associated with the Assembly a happy, peaceful and productive Christmas and New Year, and so I make the proposition.
Well, the members agreed to the arrangement of future business as proposed by the Chair of PPC. Very well. Constable Centennial.
Thank you, sir. Sir, it has been a difficult year for our island community, beginning as it did with the tragic events of last December, the first anniversaries of which we have recently marked in a moving memorial service in the town church. While our lives here in Jersey are fortunate in all sorts of ways, we are not immune to the difficulties caused by extremes of weather due to climate change, with serious flooding and the more recent hurricane causing a great deal of destruction of property and disruption of people's lives, while dozens of islanders were forced into emergency accommodation. As always, our professional and voluntary teams rose magnificently to these occasions, while individuals have responded with concern and generosity to the challenges caused by extremes of wind and rain, including the loss of so many of the island's trees. Quite apart from the difficulties we've experienced as an island community, few of us can have been unaffected by the terrible suffering endured around the world, both as a result of natural disasters and of human agency. Most distressing of all, the plight of innocent people in the world's war zones, in particular in the Israel-Palestine conflict and in Ukraine. At a time when it is traditional to remember the massacre of the innocents, one of the harsh realities underpinning the Christmas story, our hearts go out at this time to the children who are suffering now in wars around the world. On a much happier note, the community has come together this year to celebrate the coronation of His Majesty King Charles III and the Queen, followed by the now customary events marking Liberation Day. The combined festivities were extremely well devised and managed, to the delight of islanders, as well as showing off our island home to the many visitors, including visiting dignitaries who joined us. The constables are grateful to all the volunteers who worked to make the celebrations around the parishes so successful, and especially to the honorary police forces, whose year-round commitment to their parishes is incalculable. So, on behalf of the constables, I wish you and your family a very happy Christmas and a peaceful New Year. We extend our greetings to the Deputy Bailiff and his family, the greffier and her team, everyone, in fact, who has presided over the States Assembly this year with such obvious interest, enjoyment, and I should add, patience. We hope that our Lieutenant Governor and Dr. Kidd have enjoyed their first full year in the island and wish them a well-earned festive break from their many official duties. We wish the deputies and their families a relaxing Christmas and New Year, and the Dean and his family, the Attorney General and Solicitor General and their families, the Judicial Gref and the Jurats, the ushers and Jan, the scrutiny officers, and everyone else who works so hard to facilitate the workings of this legislature, not forgetting the island's media. We send our best wishes to the staff of the parish halls, who do so much to support the vital work of the parishes, not forgetting our hard-working and supportive partners. In saying this, I'm mindful of the fact that some of our number have been bereaved recently, and we want them to know that all of us in the Assembly are most sympathetic for their loss. The constables work closely with the emergency services, and we wish their officers a very happy Christmas and a restful New Year with their families. And we acknowledge the vital contribution of everyone who works in health and social care, especially those who will be working in the hospital, the island's care homes, community centres, and Jersey Hospice, while we're sitting down in front of a turkey on Monday week. Finally, in a departure from tradition, I hope the Assembly will join me in wishing the compliments of the season to the members of the States of Deliberation in Guernsey, and in hoping that the two bailiwicks of the Channel Islands will be able to work more closely in future. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Southern.
Thank you, sir. At least I think it's thank you. This is at least one speech where I get to have the last word. Even though,
actually, no, you don't.
Even though your words are neutrality itself. My fellow deputies and Connétable, after 4 days, arduous days, of debating the government plan, I will try and be brief, which you might feel is worthwhile, and I will try and keep the politics out of it. I don't know how to succeed, but we'll try. I speak to you as Jersey has weathered one of the worst storms for many years. Fortunately, with no loss of life, thanks to our weather forecasters, our blue light workers, and infrastructure workers. And currently, the army of roofers, who are now getting on with repairing our houses. Our glorious autumn weather seems long behind us, and we are suffering. We are suffering continued stormy weather, which, as a regular cyclist, I feel affects me more than many. An example, perhaps, of those who contribute least to climate change are the ones who most suffer its effects. Nevertheless, Jersey seems to me to be a little haven of peace in a troubled world. We have not suffered from the fires, floods, and earthquakes that have brought terrible loss of life in other parts of the world. Our problems are nothing to the horrendous scenes from Gaza and from Israel that have tended to make us overlook the continued suffering of those in Ukraine, with no end in sight to the war against Putin's Russia. We can do little to alleviate suffering on such a grand scale. What we can do is work together to make Jersey a greener and happier place for all those who live here. As last year, I turn again to Christmases depicted in literature, in particular the opening of Little Women. And I'm reminded on this that my wife says, and if there'd been 3 wise women, they wouldn't have got there late to the birth of Jesus. Because when they get lost, they would ask directions. The opening of Little Women, set at the time of American Civil War, and the words were, "Christmas won't be Christmas without any presents, so complains Joe." And yet the girls stoically accept their fate and then willingly sacrifice their Christmas dinner for an even poorer family. An example of kindness and care for others that sets an example for us all to follow. This is the time of year when we should be, and we do think, of others less fortunate than ourselves. And I'm mindful of the way that many are suffering from rising cost of living and without a commensurate rise in pay. We are even further away from not needing food banks than we were a year ago. The problems of a small island should be manageable and solvable. No islander should be cold and hungry this Christmas. This is where we must start. But this year has taught us that we should think globally, though what we can do to bring peace, alleviate poverty, and halt climate change is a drop in the ocean. But I remind members that the ocean is made up of lots of drops. We are a rich island, and particularly we should set an example for others to follow. Maybe we should use our cars less, take fewer long-distance flights, or reduce our consumption of single-use plastic. Let us this year, in particular, give careful consideration to our New Year's resolutions, and perhaps make them mean something more permanent. With that, it's season's greetings to His Excellency and Dr. Kidd, the bailiff, the deputy bailiff, the greffier of the States, the deputy greffier, and assistant greffiers, the Dean, the Attorney General, the Solicitor General, the Viscounts and their staff, the ushers and all of the State's staff behind the scenes, who have enabled States meetings to operate, and we wish Jan in particular season's greetings. And in particular, because I'm so proud of the things that they do, my focus turns to scrutiny officers who help and in fact do such a wonderful job enabling us to work as scrutiny. Season's greetings, happy Christmas, one and all.
Connétable, Deputy Southern, thank you for your kind words and the expressions of collective good wishes on behalf of the Assembly. I'm very happy to indeed to have this traditional opportunity to reciprocate them. The difficulty with being the third speaker is that pretty well everything that one might have wanted to say has already been said. Even so, and I know from experience the liberal view the Assembly takes to the standing order against repetition, I may wish to make the odd observation that has already been made. Firstly, I can echo with a full heart the statement of the Chief Minister, the Connétable of St Helier and Deputy Southern, when you state with pride, the pride we can have in our emergency and blue light services and first responders, and those who have shown themselves once again in the preceding 12 months, or on more than one occasion, to be quite magnificent in their support of islanders in need. We are entirely entitled to be proud of them without any embarrassment at all. We can also be proud of our ability to celebrate and do joyful things, as the Connétable has said, Liberation Day, the coronation, things around and about that. We are an island that when we put our mind to it or when we need it, live our experience fully, whether it's in adversity or whether it's in joy and celebration. We respond as it is right to do. I'm not going to speak for too long. It's been an arduous week and all members will be justifiably tired and looking forward to a break. The Assembly has worked extremely hard, particularly over the last few days. It is true that a greater familiarity with standing orders might have eased the burden a little bit. But by and large, if I may say so, the debates in the Assembly, including the arduous one over the last few days, have been enthusiastic, and that is a good thing. And with some small exceptions, good-humoured, and that is important as well. In reflecting on the business of the Assembly, of course, it would be wrong not to say that both I and all members have relied on the greffier and her team. We rely on them for their commitment and dedication, and I would like to pay tribute to the enormous contribution to the work of the Assembly made by the greffier, the deputy greffier, and all of the team at the State's Gref. But perhaps I'm particularly aware of their contribution because of the amount of assistance I get personally on a regular basis, and I'm grateful for the level of support and guidance that I receive in the day-to-day functioning of this part of my office. I also would like to mention the ushers who sit and occasionally pass notes and do the things which are necessary. And of course, also Jan, who has been mentioned already. They work in the background, but they provide invaluable and important support, and in small ways, and sometimes in big ways, make our lives easier and more enjoyable in this building. It's traditional at this time of year to mention some statistics. The contribution to the Christmas charity appeal through fines has been £100, which is a good thing. The Assembly has met on 33 days in the year. 101 propositions have been lodged. 91 propositions have been debated, and they break down as follows: 10 laws, 23 sets of regulations, 6 legislative acts, 7 appointments, 1 vote of censure, 1 vote of no confidence, 5 propositions of government policy, 3 amendments to standing orders, 35 independent members' propositions, 1 in committee debate, and a partridge in a pear tree. That actually are very interesting statistics, and it is interesting perhaps to compare to those of previous years. It's also traditional at this time of the year to talk about New Year resolutions. And one of mine, and I will have many, and I need many, but one of mine will be to apply standing orders with more rigour in the year to come. If one of the New Year resolutions of members could be to read standing orders, then that could lead to a very happy synergy. But whether you approach this time of year from the point of view of the traditional Christmas story, with all the optimism, with all the light and the new promise that it brings, or simply from the natural human experience of the winter solstice, which itself signaled the beginning of an increased light in the world in a physical sense, this is a time for all of us where we can go still. We can pause and we can reflect and anticipate what is to come. So we hold in mind, I hope, those who are less fortunate than ourselves throughout the world and indeed in this island, and they have of course been mentioned and I won't repeat that, but also we keep in mind those among us, among our number, who have suffered bereavement and who, together with others, are facing this time, which should be one of happiness, with sadness and with grief. And we hold them very much in our thoughts. But in any event, whatever your views or whatever your philosophies, it's time now, as I've said, to pause and for everyone to take an extremely well-earned rest. No matter what Christmas may mean for each of us, I would like for myself, for the Deputy Bailiff, and on behalf of His Excellency and the Crown Officers, and for the Dean and the Greffier, the Viscount, the Chief Officer, and all members of their respective teams, to thank all members for your kindness and support, and to wish you and your respective families a peaceful and happy Christmas break and an optimism for a joyful 2024. Thank you. Is the adjournment proposed? Thank you. Very well. The Assembly stands adjourned until sometime in 2024.